Thank you for your patience. Welcome to today's meeting. My name is Councillor Jabbar Riaz. I'm the chair of the committee. This is a public meeting and members of the public and press are permitted to record on the proceedings. Reporting includes filming, photography, making an audio recording and providing commentary on proceedings. Please note that this meeting is recorded and streamed live. These recordings are published on the relevant meeting page of the Council's website. By choosing to attend this public meeting, you are deemed to have given your consent to being filmed, recorded, and for any footage to be broadcast and published. If the alarm sounds, the premises must be evacuated immediately. Do not spend time collecting personal belongings. All emergency escape routes are clearly signed. Once you have left the building, the assembly point is in the High Street opposite the Guildhall. Members and other speakers are reminded to use the microphone when speaking. Okay. Thank you. Agenda item number 1 is appointment of substitutes.
Yes, Chair, thank you. We do have 2 substitutes tonight. Mel Orcott is here for Karen Lawrence and Sue Smith is here for Jill DeSera.
Thank you. Agenda item number 2, declarations of interest. I'll take Councillor Petrowski.
Thank you, Chair. 2 interests to declare. I'm a member of the Worcestershire Interfaith Forum and I also work for Platform Housing, which has pretty close relationship with Worcester Community Trust. So I thought I'd better declare it now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lawrenson.
Thank you, Chair. Declare an interest in the penultimate item. In the very distant past, I was an active member of Worcester Palestine Friendship.
Thank you. Councillor Collier.
Item 8 on the agenda, I'm a member of Worcester Play Council.
Thank you. Any other items? Anybody else to declare? Julian, can you record my declaration of interest on agenda item 11? I've attended meetings and given procedural advice, but not an active member of the Worcester Palestine Friendship Group. Okay. Agenda item number 3, public participation. We have 4 speakers this evening. Can I invite Sohail Faraz to the speakers table, please? Sohail, we've got 3.5 minutes for you.
3.5 minutes?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Yes, good evening. Thank you, everyone, for giving me this chance to speak. So I've read through your agenda notes, and I'll just briefly like to say Worcester Council in the past has been actively involved with the Worcester Palestine Friendship in various situations, and I think that needs to be recognised foremost. If you go back to 2013, we had about 15 youth come in August. They stayed in Worcester. They met, I think, Paul Denham, who was the mayor of Worcester at that. These youngsters have gone to various community groups in Worcester Community Trust. They've gone, we've had various other people represent Worcester Palestine Friendship Group from the West Bank. So Worcester has been actively associated with Palestine, and Worcester Palestine Friendship Group up and down the country exists. So if the council were actually to be involved, I think they already are without knowing it. And I think that's the first thing we need to understand. And secondly, I think going upon the current situation, I think it's even more imperative that people make a stand alongside Palestine, but not on a political view, on a humanitarian, on a social and moral aspect. I think on the document it talks about the Nolan principles. There aren't just 3 Nolan principles, there's 7 Nolan principles. And why shouldn't we take those into regard when making a decision? There's about integrity, accountability, openness, and honesty. And why can't we be the leadership in trying to draw a path where people come together? Why can't it on an interfaith forum basis? Why can't we get Jewish kids from London or any other place come to meet the Palestinian children we have? I think we as Worcester could really set a benchmark if we really press forward from a social, humanitarian and educational aspect. You know, we've had youngsters that have come in the past to Worcester when they were 12, 13, and now you see pictures of them on Facebook, doctors, some in America studying, because when they come to Worcester, they realize, you know what, we can be treated like humans and we can value who we are. And that's why I think it's imperative that if Worcester Council actively takes a part in this friendship, it could really lead the way to bringing people and communities together in a time like this. That's what I'd like to say, really. Thank you.
discussed later on in this order of things, so if you can hold on for that. Thank you. The next speaker we have is Canon Brian McGinley, St George's Church. No? Sorry. Oh, sorry. Do apologise. I've jumped ahead. Reverend Catherine Lack, Chair of the Worcestershire Interfaith Forum. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you very much. For those who don't know me, yes, I am Catherine Lack and I chair the Worcestershire Interfaith Forum. And I want to thank you very much for the opportunity to come again. I spoke here in November and I gave the background to the idea of the faith covenant. And I want to say a big thank you. That's my first thing I really want to say, both for listening and for producing a very positive paper and the fact that it's on the agenda later this evening. Why am I speaking again? Partly to say thank you, but partly also to draw attention to a couple of quite important bits. The first bit is on page 1 of your document. Faith groups have a great deal to offer and some of their potential is being overlooked at present. One thing which really struck me is that faith groups are some of the most diverse in Worcester. And in fact, St George's Catholic Church, which you're about to hear from Father Brian just after me, is one of the best examples of this, along with Worcester Mosque and Welfare Association. Many nationalities, all backgrounds. And it is part of the DNA, if you like, of faith groups to care for the less fortunate and to reach them in all sorts of ways. That's my first point. My second is to talk briefly about mistrust and fear, because I'm very aware in my work that people don't really know how to talk about religion. Most are frightened to talk about it for fear of offending people. But recent research suggests that anxieties about this, and in reports published 20 years ago, are now largely reduced. Faith groups have come an awfully long way in that last few years. For instance, all now have policies to ensure excellence in safeguarding and child protection, health and safety, accountability and transparency. Of course, mistakes are made, but there has been huge progress as well. Thirdly, faith communities are well placed and committed to promoting the Council's 5 strategic aims, supporting stronger and connected communities, all communities in the city, and this with joined up thinking, strengthening community cohesion. And if we want to talk about the heritage city with the 21st century culture, we only need look up the road to the cathedral where visitors are up and it's very much appreciated. Enhancing and sustaining our beautiful city, think of the eco church and the like and all our priorities of heading for net zero. My fourth point is that how much good work is being done already. I see the covenant as putting this on a slightly more sort of official basis. For instance, only a couple of days ago, we had the Holocaust Memorial Day commemoration here. And more than 100 people, I didn't actually count, gathered, including almost all the secondary schools in Worcester and the university. We gathered to remember and to commit to working for peace. And the faith communities take the lead on this. Research has been done. I have one side of A4 here if anybody wanted to see it. A summary of the research of key findings and a brief excerpt from this. Overwhelming endorsement and appreciation of faith-based social engagement in response to the pandemic, because that's when this research really dates from, and how certainly the writers of that report expect this type of work to carry on, but also anticipate increases in such areas as homelessness, debt counselling and education, to name but 3. And my last point is to stress how each area is different. I love the bit that you put in on the agenda in the report there. Here in Worcester, we don't yet know what our exact priorities should be, but they could be something along the lines of health, because certainly the faith communities played a crucial role during the pandemic in communication with hard-to-reach groups. Debt counselling in a cost of living crisis is another area where throughout the country, faith communities have been crucial, and in communication on all sorts of things. There's a proven value in vaccination centres and communication, particularly during the pandemic and every public health initiative. And that really is all I've got to say. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Reverend. Really appreciate your comments on this. Obviously, the item will be discussed later on, where it will be open to the floor for councillors to comment on. Thank you. Canon Brian McGinley, St George's Church.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members, for allowing me to come and address you this evening. I'm here more in a supportive capacity for the ever-increasing Malayali community, many of whom worship at St George's Church in Sansom Place, where I happen to be the parish priest. The Malayali community are from Kerala, southwest India. I first came into contact with them in the early 2000s in my previous parish in Burton-on-Trent. Most of the people who came were the women, the young women and married mums who were recruited by the NHS, and that's an incredible contribution that they do make, including our own Worcestershire Royal Hospital, the number of Indian nurses that we now recruit and are still recruiting. Then the husbands and the children began to arrive, and when I moved here in 2007, there's already the beginnings of a growing Malayali community. I have the privilege of having them as members of my congregation. Most of them are Catholics, other Christian denominations as well, but they are a large growing community, and I'm here really to promote them tonight and to make sure that they get the recognition that they deserve. They are an incredibly organised community, and you'll hear more from Councillor Ross shortly. But above all, they contribute greatly to the welfare of Worcester, not just the nurses and the NHS, but also to our schools and to our cultural life, which is mixed. I'm not just saying that because I'm a Scotsman, but because it does a rich helping the cultural and ethnic mix of our city. They do look after themselves very, very well. I'm amazed at the charity that they show within themselves to needy members, including financial help, all sorts of support to families in need, paying for funerals and so on. And they've injected a lot of life into the city and into our church. So I would like to ask, how can this committee help the Worcester Malayali Cultural Association in boosting public awareness of that large and growing section of our community, and for them to be better engaged in wider cultural activities and representation in Worcester? That's all I'd ask. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Canon. An official answer will come to you from officers. After Councillor Cross speaks, I will speak some of my thoughts regarding it. Councillor Cross.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, fellow members, fellow councillors and officers for this opportunity to speak, and a huge thank you to the members of our Malayali community who have come tonight. So this really is just, many of you will already be aware of our friends who've come and, I mean, it's 20 years now, or approaching 20 years since Worcestershire Malayali Community Cultural Association was established, and we've heard a number of the good things that we share, including whether it's religious or whether it's sports. If I outline some of the sports, cricket, the team name of Worcester Amigos, they have a football team of juniors, I think practicing and playing in nunnery and Perth as well. A dance group, the ladies and children especially. Kabaddi is a national sport that's really worth looking up, and dragon boat racing, obviously a big event in Worcester, in which our Malayali communities team, when they won the UK Championships in 2017, and there's a plan to be active and taking part again this year. So a similar sort of technical and endurance sport is also the tug of war, which is way beyond. I was amazed when I first saw it. Last time I'd seen tug of war, it was young farmers and generally fairly enthusiastic, but not very technical. This now is really quite something to see. Yes, athletics, yes, timing, yes, endurance, but also the psychology as well, and just how to get your teams together. And bearing in mind, got engineers, process engineers, medics, people working lots of hours, a community that we've hardly heard of. I mean, I was blissfully ignorant, or woefully ignorant actually, until recently. And you know, this is a community who are quietly getting on and doing lots of good things. And with meagre resources, I mean, the Thamari tug of war team were practicing in a car park, making use of a tree. And they won the UK Championships last year. They came second in the international ones. So they were self-funding going over to the US. Wow, you know, that's a lot of involvement and dedication, and deserves respect. And so seeing the conditions under which they were practicing and how informal things were, and the challenges that there understandably were from people not knowing what was going on, etc., and generally a sense of, hey, this could be better. So understood. I've just today received a copy of the specs of what the US team who won were using for their training, and I'll be happy to share these as we get them fleshed out, and they should be soon. But we've been meeting with council officers and with the team and trying to understand, well, what could be needed, and I'd be happy to name if desired, but I'll follow your leads. But so a tug of war training rig and practice rig, whereby you don't need two full opposing teams to practice against each other. You might have just 4 people who can make it, depending on work shifts. So the idea is that we're going to provide something in, and the venue agreed tentatively, subject to details to be all acceptable and everything to be okay, which it's looking quite good, is Nunnery Wood Sports Centre. The next step is for a detailed spec and costed proposal to be put together. The team, from the outset, I've been clear saying Worcester City Council under serious budget pressures, you know, we cannot expect or anticipate or expect in any way. But, so a costed proposal will be there. We've got a place, we've got an idea of the kit, we're going to get that all sorted out. And there's been quite a lot of work, but the Thamari team will need to restart training around Easter time. And there's a national tug of war tournament supposed to be held in Worcester. Now that will be opposing teams, so literally just an athletics track will suffice for that. But in order to win that, you need the rig, which is where, you know, so that's where the training comes in. As soon as we get indicative costs, and spec, we'll be able to look at sources of funding. So we've been clear that council budgets are massively under significant pressure, so council funding cannot be presumed. But help would be really appreciated for helping to identify and apply for other sources of funding, such as national sports grants. So my question to you all, please, is what support, financial or other, could this committee or our council offer Worcester Mallee Alley Cultural Association in the creation of a tug of war training rig and Nunnery Wood Sports Centre, which will be available for everyone to use? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cross. Really appreciate all the public participation this evening. I know some speakers at the back didn't manage to register in time, but it's important to acknowledge those that have come here. I think you wanted to speak on the first item, which is Worcester Community Trust. That item is the first item, so please do stay around for the debate. If there are any specific queries that you have at the back, please refer to any of the councillors here or any of your ward councillors, and we should be able to and ask those questions on your behalf as well. Is that okay? Just before we move on to the official item, really appreciate the Worcester Mallee Alley community coming here today. I've been aware of them for the last 20 years since they've been originated in Worcester. I know my colleagues, Councillor Bashar Ali, have been supporting them with their COVID recovery funds and their councillor funds, and Councillor Simon Cronin, bless him, rest in peace, when he was about, and Pat Agar have been significantly involved with the Mallee Alley community when the majority of the base was in Ronkswood. I know you've now moved on to other parts of the area as well, and as well as the obviously working, I myself with the Worcester Mellor Association would really be keen to obviously work with you in terms of that. In terms of the process for what you're asking, there is a formal process for that. I don't know if you read the Worcester News today, but the grant applications are back open for small grants. That's one of the possible routes that possibly this organisation can go through. If you can get in contact with Warwick Neal, who's our officer with the lead with the community engagement team, who should be able to arrange some of that in there. We do not underplay the significance and contributions that you have made within this city. It's a great and significant contribution, and we were more than willing to continue to work with you to make sure that you display the beauty of your culture within this city. Thank you. Okay, agenda item number 5, Worcester Community Trust. Oh, sorry, agenda item number 4. So minutes of the last meeting. I wasn't in the chair last time this meeting was held. Hopefully my vice chair should be able to confirm, along with the other committee members that were here. We'll take the minutes page by page. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3, page 4, page 5. Okay. Any issues? They're agreed as. Thank you. Agenda item number 5 then. Finally, it's Worcester Community Trust Annual Update and Delivery of Business Plan. Yours, Lloyd? John? Sorry. Welcome to the table, CEO John Newey and Helen Davis. Thank you. Are you introducing it or are you going straight in? John, do you want to take over then?
Yeah, absolutely. Julian, if you want to put the presentation up. So we'll work through the presentation. It will take about 10 minutes, maybe just a little bit longer. Once we've gone through the presentation, then we'll have time to answer any questions. And I'm also welcome to take questions from the public speakers. No? No, can't. Okay, that's fine. Okay, next slide, please. So, good evening all. I believe I've met most of you, but for those who haven't, my name is John Newey, and I'm the CEO of Worcester Community Trust.
And I am Helen Davis, Director of Skills and Deputy CEO for Worcester Community Trust.
For those less familiar with the Trust, we manage 6 community hubs and 2 satellite buildings in some of the city's neighbourhoods facing the highest levels of inequality, but also home to some of the most vibrant communities in the city. Alongside this, we currently deliver 12 services locally, citywide, and across the county. Today, we will be reviewing the social impact and financial outcomes of the Trust in 2022-23 and give you a brief update on projects in 2023-24. So firstly, the finances. Sorry, Julie, thank you. Worcester City Council, to sort of set the scene of how you guys support us really, like Worcester City Council offers continued support to Worcester Community Trust through the management grant, which is worth about £76,000. You also support us with a percentage of our maintenance costs. Alongside this, as councillors, you support with your donations of time, skills and funds. So on behalf of the charity, I'd just like to thank you all. For every £1 you're investing in the Trust is able to bring in £12 into community-based services that support your constituents most in need. The minor deficit, so just to refer to what's on the screen, the minor deficit really is just, it was related to coming out of COVID, slow release of projects. We just, it's a minor deficit for us, just on the basis of catching up with ourselves for a lot of the grant funding and projects that were slowed down through the pandemic. Next slide, please. So these are some of the stats. I won't go through them all. You'll see a high proportion of how we generate our income. About 2/3 comes from grants. But I think one of the things that's been interesting going through this, we did a snapshot of Warndon and found that on a couple of particular weeks, about 1,000 individual people passed through Warndon Centre. So that 10,000 visitors to the hub is a really low estimate. We directly work with over 2,000 people across our projects, or about 2% of the population. And also when considering the volunteer hours, that amounts to about £100,000 in the median wage in the UK. Can we have a look at the next slide? So this is to show where we are. These are 2,000 drop pins across the city and county. This is for last financial year. So the only thing we were delivering specifically out of county was Dawn in South Worcestershire. And the ones that are out of region are actually building block customers. So it's just to give you a sense that we truly are, even though we are locally based within our neighbourhoods and we are very focused around those, We are a citywide service, and next year we have 2 contracts that are countywide around 2 of our more specialised services. Next slide. So Dawn. Dawn is one of our longest standing services that's been going for approximately 10 years. It's an in-person support service for anyone experienced or has experienced domestic abuse. Our team delivers this across South Worcestershire and is currently at capacity. Many people enter Worcester Community Trust through Dawn, but continue their journey on through other many services. When thinking about the social return on investment, local authorities across the country spend £11.1 billion on children in care. Each one of those 359 children we have positively affected have avoided the possibility of entering care, are living safer, happier lives, and is saving your local authority millions in care costs from your local budgets. Next slide.
Thank you. The building block is our construction training centre, which provides a range of opportunities. 264 people have accessed training through the building block. 80% of those training courses were unaccredited training, 20% were accredited training. About 2,900 of hours of volunteers' time was contributed to the building block. This year, we have been spent monitoring and evaluating building blocks' finances and performance as we move towards the following year's increases in accredited training associated with the Towns Fund outcomes. The project finished the year on a minus of £38,000, and we've been monitoring, evaluating and implementing different approaches to raise its performance and exploring other approaches to prepare for the targets set within the Towns Fund contract of 24-25. Next slide, please. Building Better Opportunities. The Building Better Opportunities was a service to provide support to individuals aged 16 and above who were unemployed and who were looking to move closer into work. 22-23, 366 participants were supported on programme, 209 were in jobless households, 188 had a disability, and 325 of those were long-term unemployed. This was BBO's final year. This year, we worked hard to implement multiple approaches to create continuation of these types of services. You'll see this in a later slide. This was achieved through wellbeing job clubs and welfare support.
Next slide. So, Community Connectors. This is a project in its 5th and penultimate year. It's funded by the lottery, and it is a precursor to what we now refer to as asset-based community development. We'll be taking the many lessons learned from this project to seek continuity for a future project in 24-25. This will be based on the ABCD model of developing people's agency, confidence and skills to effect positive change in their own environments. We will also be looking at how we can develop more community-led organisation and support a culture of smaller VCSEs within the city. A key challenge this year has been the complexity of need and serious mental health that attendees has been coming to the open access groups with. This has been a consequence of pressures of increased cost of living and oversubscribed healthcare services. We've done well to upskill our team in mental health first aid and suicide prevention and connect with other partner organisations to make sure everyone accessing the project finds the help they need. Change slide, please. Thank you. Joy is our women's re-empowerment project, and to loosely quote Jo Rays, the project manager, it is a re-empowerment project because everyone is born with power and life seems to strip it away from us one way or another. It has a particular focus on loneliness and isolation, social isolation. The Joy team always offers a range of training, sociable and volunteer opportunities. About 40% of the people who attend Joy are actually under 50, which is quite rare across some of these services. And 48% of the attendees have a diagnosed mental health condition, with 21% having a disability or learning difficulty. In this financial year, 40 people from the Joy project completed training courses with Worcester Community Trust, and about 4 people have come to work with us. This year, we've moved from lottery-funded contract to a county-wide service supported by Public Health. Next year, within that, we'll be moving towards a male offer. Currently, it's a female-only offer, or female identifying. So we have just recruited for that. Next slide, please.
Thank you. Snack and Chat project is aimed at the over 50s, providing them with a healthy 2-course meal and a drink. This is run from 3 of our community hubs, which are Ronkswood, Horizon and Dines Green. As of March 23, 140 clients were accessing this service. 56% of these people live in a single-person household, and 2,911 meals were served. With Snack and Chat, we do our best to make every visit count. We invite partner services in, link up sessions with physical exercise and bring various goodwill into the city for Christmas meals and one-off initiatives with partners like Platform Housing to deliver soups to residents in social housing and to support living residency. Next slide, please.
So after schools and youth clubs. So within this year, we reached 362 young people through our after school and youth clubs with an approximate 50-50 split between the younger and older groups and also about 50-50 between the male and female. To go through some of the demographics that we're reaching, 75% of the young people accessing come from low-income households and 10% have an EHC plan. 8% of the young people have diagnosed SEN, where if you look at the general population, that's about 4%. So we have we are reaching people who have the most highest need within the city. This year was the final year of the Positive Activities contract. We were, however, successful in obtaining the lead contract from Worcester County Council from 2023 to 28 for the Worcester District. We have supported a partnership bid that includes open access and SEN provision from Purdyswell Young People's Leisure Club. We now have one-to-one mental health workers in all our youth sessions provided by On-Side Advocacy. We have social action and responsive work, which is being provided by YMCA in all our sessions for periods of time. And then we have also supported, we're looking to seed and support more community-led activity within the areas where we're not delivering in. And we have a central LGBTQIA plus group called Vestatilly, which was financially supporting. To give you the size and the scale of this, like we've moved as a charity from receiving £86,000 in delivery to £36,000. The County Council Positive Activities is no longer our main funder. Our main funder is Worcester Municipal Charities, who supports us with about £42,000. It's cost about £50,000 to run 2 sessions. And much in the way we start many of the years, we raise about 2/3 of what we have and then have to raise the rest. So there's still a deficit of about £37,000. Next slide. So this was to illustrate a sort of strategy that we've been working with. One, because of the funding, we've lost 1/3 of our funding, but one, really to try and improve. We're quite a small organisation in the grand scheme of things. So instead of delivering relatively low quality provision from 6 different places, we've moved into 3 catchments, east, west, and then central, which also supports the predominantly Muslim communities. This is an illustration of attendees. We started since September, so we're rolling into a new contract, and we've only just fully recruited. Our new youth manager doesn't start until the beginning of the year, so we've been working on secondments at the moment. I don't know if you guys can see, but I think what's one of the tests and challenges within this is, are people from Warndon, Ronkswood, Tolly going to come to Brixfields? Because there was a sort of pitch within this and an experiment to see that, because if the quality is good enough, will they come to it? And is there enough, can we challenge the territorialism and the sort of postcode sort of wars of young people? And in actual fact, since September, we've got, considering we're essentially starting afresh with new types of delivery, we've got about 220 young people coming to the sessions. And we're getting people in almost equal numbers coming from Tolly, Ronkswood, Warndon, and around Brickfields. So I think that there's positive signs with that. We need to do lots more work. We're going to be looking at things like car sharing, improved bike facilities, because I think one of the underpinning things is about safety and security and walking through KGB at night. Downs Green is challenging but really rewarding, and then we're also working, we've got 3 groups actually at Horizon, where we have a youngers group, we have an older boys, and then we have a girls group on the weekend. Great. And next slide. Just a quick one. This is just our holiday provision. We tend to see our open access is about 40 weeks a year, and then 13 weeks of the year, give or take, we run holiday provision. So we get about 400 people. We've started to try and make sure that we're balancing this out to get the older, like to cater for the youth as well, so from the 12 to 17-year-olds, because historically we've only ever delivered that to young people, the younger contingent. Next slide, please. So into the section around new projects. We ran warm hubs last year to sort of like, you know, varying success. They were quite challenging to run. I think the importance of having community centres open and having open, informal, welcoming spaces is an absolute key target for us. The idea of them banded under warm hubs didn't quite work, but certain things did work. When you tied them to other things, people would come early, they'd stay late, people would stay for a cup of tea. We used some of the money to run neighbourhood kitchens, which are still going. And that was a really good partnership between WGA, Community Church, and Jill DeSera was a key contributor to that one. Next slide, please. So hub finances. Last year, we put forward a business plan, which was agreed in January. I think that was in your appendices, like the attached documents. We are slowly building up the expectation. It costs about £100,000 a year to run one of the centres. It's about £600,000 in total to run them. At the moment, you can see we're sort of accruing about half of that. And the rest is subsidised either through grants that you guys offer, so the £75,000 plus about £50,000 this year that will incrementally go down in maintenance. And we exceeded our target. This year, we've already reached 75% of our targets year to date, so we're very much on target. It's really important to acknowledge how much of a challenge this is to make them wash their own faces. Everyone who uses our centre, like we don't deliver anything really to private companies because they go to elsewhere where they have serviced provision. Everyone who is delivering from our centre has a social impact and caters to the constituents in the area. So one thing we are looking at this year, one thing that's being rolled out right at the moment, is just making sure we haven't increased our prices, but we are basically putting out one community price. Actually, we have two. If you're a key holder, you get 25% discount. If not, we have one community price, which is across the board for everyone. Other things to take into consideration with this, there's been 2 10% increases on national living wage, which is fantastic. There's a really big knock-on effect with us. And our energy bills went from about £38,000 last year, and it's about £100,000 this year. So there's been really significant increases. We will need to do a price review as well, but the likelihood is that won't be going up significantly because the reality is there's a lot of competitors nearby and they have more rooms in single centres and we can't compete. Next slide, please.
In April 2022, as part of the Town's Done business case, we proposed moving Building Block to a model of delivery that would enable local people with the lowest of educational attainment levels gain access to recognised qualifications. This was a strategic approach to raise the quality of life through increased qualifications and therefore their economic opportunities. We've been exploring multiple ways over the last 18 months and moved to move away from a slow and patient model of delivering unaccredited skills to reach 1,000+ Worcester residents with the project's benefits. Challenges this year have been low uptake on paid courses for customers due to the cost of living, reducing people's spare income for paid courses. This has been felt across the sector and also limited access to government funding for skills. Multiple conversations have taken place with colleges, training providers and construction industries exploring partnership delivery. Our recommendation to our Board of Trustees is to partner with a local training provider. As you can see from the slide what the benefits are for this, and they include retention of community access, increased local young people having access to training, a wider range of courses up to level 5, and improve conversion into further training and employment. Continue links with Platform Housing to deliver Try a Trade Day, to encourage platform residents into platform workforce, continue to upskill platform employees, DWP relationships to support Worcester residents back into employment via courses at the Building Block through SWAPS, which is a Sector Work Academy programme, launch boot camps in construction and green skills. We anticipate 280 learners to go through Building Block 1 in the next financial year that are local Worcester residents, and they will gain a formal qualification that will support them into further learning via an apprenticeship or into paid employment. A further 170 learners from the wider Worcestershire area. There are some disadvantages that will come along with this by moving forward. It will move away from informal, volunteer-supported delivery that previously focused on wellbeing. However, wellbeing can be picked up by our job coaches under our welfare project. Next slide, please. New projects for 23-24, there will be focus on and aimed at supporting local Worcester people with the cost of living crisis and will be through our welfare support team. Our Dawn project will continue with an extension to our main funded contract. 2 community builders will continue to work on resident-led food projects and deliver multiple community-led activities in both Dines Green and in Warndon. Continued development of high-quality youth-led service. Our Joy project will go county-wide, and as John alluded to earlier in the presentation, there will be a male empowerment offer. Sustainability for us and our hubs by focusing on green improvements to all of our buildings and new relationships with partner organisations as Cadent and GLP.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I'll open the item to the floor now for a general discussion, and then we'll sum up in the end. I'll take Councillor Amos first, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I don't know whether I'm being unduly optimistic, but I'm just wondering whether that's something I've been saying for a few years has actually come to pass. It's actually on the last page. The projects for 23-24, rollout of Joy Project Nation county-wide and extension of male empowerment offer. Now, I just like just a few details of that, because if it's what I think it is, I would like to congratulate Worcester Community Trust for actually doing that. Because, as you know, Chair, in the past, I have pointed out, it's a source of concern, that white working class boys are the biggest group that is underperforming, and reports have gone to Parliament about this, but nothing seems to have been done, and I think society is paying the price of that neglect. If now an organisation like this is recognising that need and doing something about it, I would commend them. So I'm just hoping it's what I think it is. Otherwise, what I said in the past didn't make any difference anyway.
John, do you want to come on that, answer that question?
Yes. So we're starting off small because we've only got one worker, but he's recruited and he's got a good background. It's about, there are some projects out there, so it's about men's mental health. Like there is obviously the Man's Shed, which is a big one, but then there's also things like Mandem and some other smaller groups which we've been connecting with. The first part will be mapping what's available to make sure we're not duplicating, because there is some stuff out there, and there's quite a lot of really inspiring people working on this at the moment. And then where there are gaps, we will be able to sort of create projects within those spaces. Again, from a community-led perspective, what the men that we engage with want and isn't available, we will do our best to try and support them. So we will see how it goes, but it's same with our domestic abuse service. We now have support of some men and male identifying clients, and so it's new work for us as well. So we'll be interested. Really, we can stay in contact about how it's progressing.
Thank you. I hope it succeeds. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Amos, and thank you, John, for that. I mean, just with my other hat on, in terms of the Perryfield Community Association, we picked up on that exact problem over COVID when we were doing education programs, and that actually that demographic you're talking about was being left behind, and we designed some programs exactly that. So I'm really, really appreciative that you've raised it, and actually why it hasn't been picked up earlier in terms of that. It should have been, you know, it's been an underlying issue for a while, only coming to the fore now. Councillor Lawrenson and then Petrowski.
Thank you, Chair. Is that working? Yeah. Thank you for the presentation. So, yeah, 3 months ago, I asked an officer about closure of youth clubs in Worcester. So there's a bit of a preamble, then there's a genuine question. And the response I received from the officer, Worcester City Council officer, was that WCT are providing outreach into Ronkswood, Warndon and Tolladine, and some transport's been provided to encourage young people to come to those 3 hubs. The officer said that that wasn't ideal, as there are always parts of the city with young people who need the access, and WCT are actively seeking additional third-party funding to try and increase the use of the hubs. So the question is, has that situation regarding third-party funding improved since I asked that question last October?
Thank you. To clarify some of the details on that, we are running from KGV, we are running from Dines Green, and we are running from Horizons. We have a central one which supports the Muslim communities around Midland Road. We have Dines Green, which supports our west side of the city, and then we have KGV, which supports the east. So we've got 3 going at the moment, and there's a deficit of about a third within that. It costs about £50,000, so it's actually £170,000 to run those 3 services. We run a youngers group and an olders group, so we have about an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on the session, that run back to back, and those are the 3 sessions. What our strategy is about improving the quality so that we're able to draw from a wider set of people. The problem is we're quite a small organisation, and trying to manage 6 different venues, particularly when you have to cover the room hire costs, the staffing costs, and all the management and planning, was just unmanageable prior to that, and the quality wasn't great. What we're seeing is the quality is improving. It's really challenging. I mean, with Dines Green, it's a particularly challenging but incredibly rewarding side of it, but the safeguardings alone take about an hour afterwards. It's really quite complex work. So this is the idea is it's an experiment to try something new, because what wasn't working, what we were doing before wasn't really reaching the quality I would expect from a youth service. And we're going to try and develop the quality. And as I sort of mentioned within that, we've brought one-to-one youth workers. We're working in partnership to try and layer up within that to improve the quality. So it can be youth-led. We can bring in filmmaking or marketing or gardening, which are 3 things that came up from some of our youth voice kind of young leaders conversations, and we build that up. I think the reality is we need a youth-focused organisation in the city who can lead on that. We have Purdiswell Young People's Leisure Club, who's delivering from a different place, and we've supported them with, and they've got quite high numbers, and I haven't got their data yet, but that is also a citywide facility. They do have minibuses which bring people, particularly for their SEN open access groups. So yeah, I think the information is slightly wrong. Our aspiration is to improve the quality and improve the numbers attending. And then I think it's unrealistic for us to be delivering 6 alongside our 12 other things. I think possibly what we need to explore, as a conversation between the council, between the youth collaborative, is what does the city need from a youth perspective?
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick comment. Yeah, I heard from one of my colleagues, I can't remember who it was, but a comment about the lack of provision for young people in the city. And having lived here, and it's not having to go at Worcester WCT, I think it's a challenge that both of us have to try and take on. But having lived here for 17 years, albeit I'm in my 40s, I'm minded to agree with that comment. So absolutely, we need to have a conversation, not just a conversation, but hopefully action that will provide more facilities for young people.
Absolutely agree. Bearing in mind we work on a 1-to-8 ratio, we've got enough money to have 3 youth workers within a session. So we're looking at 24 people. We try and get 2 volunteers in, so you can add another sort of 16 people to that. Across those 3 sessions, we're going to be reaching maximum 240 people in a city of, I don't know how many young people off the top of my head, but it's a significant proportion of it. It's probably about 30,000, 40,000 people. So yeah, I completely agree with that. We will reach, even if we tripled what we do, we're still reaching too low a number to be a citywide provision. So we need to think about that from a sort of wider perspective than just a community organisation such as ourselves.
Thank you. Councillor Petrovsky.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, John. Welcome. I have an observation, a suggestion, and a question. So in that order, I think Helen mentioned triad trade. So for those not familiar with what it is, and I, having declared my interest earlier, local housing association ran a series of events and sessions for young people, targeting particularly young women actually, who are underrepresented in the trade sector and building sector. But also the demographic mentioned by Councillor Amos as well. So young boys predominantly from economically challenged neighborhoods. And they were extremely successful. So I just hope and would like to express my sort of encouragement to continue this partnership, because out of 30 people who came to one session, I remember that one because how successful it was, we ended up with 7 apprentices, which is a pretty amazing ratio if you think about it. When it comes to the suggestion, it has to do with something that John mentioned about added social value. I think it would be good to, and Tom and I think Lloyd might have heard me before talking about this, join the dots and perhaps come up with some kind of joint methodology for capturing this for the benefit of us, but also for the benefit of the general public and taxpayers in Worcester. And I think the asset-based community development approach and trying to calculate whatever model, we talked about the models I think in the past, would be a very useful thing to add next to the tables and numbers. So that's a suggestion and a plea. When it comes to the question relates to Appendix 2, your business plan proposal on page 32. Have you got this in front of you, or?
The reason we included it because it was from last year's. It was put forward last year and was accepted in January last year, so it was just to have the copy of it, as far as I was aware. So I mean, I know it fairly. I know it fairly well, so.
Can I ask you a question?
You can give it a go for sure.
So the question is, in the business plan, based on the figures in the calculation here, it looks like you're running the deficit, which is closed by, and this is where I would like to get an explanation and clarification, where does the gap closing come from? Is it our subsidy, or how do you propose to close the gap?
Thank you. So each year we start, I mean, last year we started with, it costs about £1.5 to £1.8 million to run the organisation. So if we're talking about the deficit of the business model overall, last year, some of the funds, some of our contracts lead into years, and we have them guaranteed, same with some of our grants. The deficit, each year we start with about £550,000 last year. This year it's about, so for our prospective budget, it's about £330,000. And that's fairly typical for a community organisation, is about a third of the money we need to obtain through funding through that year. Is that what you mean, or are you talking about the buildings themselves?
No, I'm talking about trying to see what you are calling it here. The trading centre, this. Indeed.
Yes.
So on page 32, if you recall the document, there's a difference between the projected income and expenditure.
Yeah.
And the income is 100,000, 118, 132, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So my question is, how do you address the deficit? How do you close the gap?
The answer is we haven't, because that was last year. So this year the target was to reach cost neutrality of the building block. It wasn't to make an extra, like a surplus. So we approached that through multiple ways. We put in some quite obtainable monitorings, like KPIs from the trading perspective. We approached businesses such as yourself, and we sell individual courses. So we were hoping to achieve 50% of the goal through trading, and then 50% of the expenditure, the equivalent expenditure would have come from grants and contracts. But we weren't successful in that this year. Fortunately, do you know the figures off the top of your head? We're about £47,000 deficit on building block at the 6-month point, which is why we're exploring other possibilities of different models of how to run it. We had achieved significantly under target on the trading, and part of that is down to cost of living. We've spoken with other sort of Kidderminster College, various other training providers, and they're not seeing as many people buying courses at the moment because it's an extra that they can't afford. And some of the, as is the way with a lot of the funding things, we weren't successful in obtaining grants or contracts at that particular point. So we've been exploring other possibilities of how we run in a more cost-efficient way that will essentially quadruple the impacts that we're trying to achieve prior to the Towns Fund. Does that answer it?
I think so, partially. I mean, we talked about the allocation of, I think Alan referred to this in PED yesterday, not yesterday, 2 days ago. And I think in terms of having the proposal in front of us first, rather than a historic document effectively, would be helpful. So it's the issue of sequencing how these committee meetings happen, but also having an up-to-date plan on how you're going to finance the building block would be very helpful.
Okay, so I don't know if Worcester Community Trust, we've got some of the dates are up there, but our proposal hasn't gone to board as to how we're going to support that. So most of the information goes to our board, which is on the 27th of February. The Communities Committee is really about us exploring and justifying the £75,000 to support the buildings, rather than justifying all aspects of our business practice. So the full business plan for the building block and its future approach will be at the Policy and Resource Committee, and that one has extensive data about the proposal, about the finances, about the impacts, and about how we're going to achieve them. Whereas today, as part of the Communities Committee, it's a broad overview of us managing 8 buildings, 6 and 2 satellites, and then 12 services. So the information is available, and it will be publicly available, won't it? And that is the 6th. Is that correct? So that information is presented. So apologies, that it's not something we were presenting at this particular meeting.
Okay, Councillor Pszczowski, the papers are online, so are available to speak on that. Is that all right? Can we, Councillor Ali?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, John, for your presentation. Can you please explain to me the process, the decision-making process around the decisions regarding the choice of the centres that obtained their youth services and of those that didn't? What level of consultation took place?
Great. So it was about how can we distribute across the city in a way that would have a catchment that's wider than just the individual centres. We used the Youth Voices consultation, which was conducted by the County Council around what young people considered to be local. That was about a 20-minute walk or cycle. And so we were sort of looking at those as our catchment as local, is 20 minutes walk or cycle. When we look at 2 of them, I think it's relatively straightforward. We had an established base in Horizon that supported the South Asian and Muslim communities. And that was very particular. That was cultivated and well formed there. So we kept that one going. Central, from a indices of deprivation perspective, there's a lot of wealth disparity. I think it's in decile 2, but mostly we're trying to reach people who have least access. So we've got Horizon there. Downs Green, I think, is fairly straightforward as well, and having representation on the west side of the city and that side of the river. It was a decision around what we did on the east, and that was based around that radius. But also we looked at things like who would travel where. So we did some of those conversations, and we did some of the sort of analysis of the data. That people came to KGV for football. So when there's big ticket items, people would come to KGV. So if there was a good enough offer, people would come there. When the fireworks display was on, you get people from across the city there. Whereas if we put it in Tolly, Ronks or Warndon, there was such a strong identity and territorialism that you were very unlikely to get the other 3 to come to that one. So it's an experiment, to be honest. And it's why I sent it, because we are having these conversations ongoing. If it doesn't, like with my youth workers, because it was why I was very keen to put the drop pins up. And I explored it on a much more local level around KGV. There is an even split coming from Ronkswood, Tolly, and slightly less from Warndon, like a mixture of Warndon and Brickfields, coming to the KGV one. And we're reaching probably about 60, 70 people across the 2 sessions from those different areas. So that was the decision making around it.
Yeah, I mean, just on that point, I mean, 20 minutes, I mean, geographically, Ronkswood on the east side stands alone. I mean, it's too far to get to KGV, too far to get to Warndon, and we've got Perrywood in between that and Horizon, and 2 distinct communities. So it feels, if I was a Nunnelywood or a Ronkswood resident, I'll feel pretty aggrieved as a young child that I have to travel all the way to KG5 or Horizon to get my youth services. So that is a little bit of a baffling decision.
What would your suggestion be as an alternative, bearing in mind the current situation of having £32,000 from the contract?
Well, I mean, we've got a commitment to this city, and we've got a young people's champion here who will be speaking shortly, and we've got a commitment to what's called a young people's strategy in terms of youth provision services, and we've given that over to responsibility to your organisation to deliver that. You understand? So cutting completely services from one centre to move it to the other as an experiment without consulting obviously the local youth in that area, it's a bit harsh, I think. Councillor Lamb.
Just to go back, the way this is funded, so it's £170,000, which is about £50,000 across the 3 different services. We get £32,000 from County Council. We get £43,000 from Worcester municipal charities. We get, I think it's 7,000 from Laslets, and then we're hoping to get another 38,000 from the lottery. So there is no investment, and this isn't a criticism at you, but if we want a youth service, there is no direct investment of youth services in the city. Worcester City Council wasn't going for that lead contract, so we put ourselves forward to it, but we've gone from £86,000 to £32,000. We are using that in an incredibly strategic way to try and address the fact that we've got far less money than I'd like to deliver something across those areas that could work for some people. But the reality is we haven't got the money, we can't magic it out of the air to deliver to an entire youth service across the city. And it's why I invite, from the Youth Collaborative, how we think about this across the city, rather than putting that emphasis on Worcester Community Trust alongside its 12 other projects. How can it take responsibility for a citywide youth service that reaches potentially 30,000 people? It's just not viable. So this is what the best we could do with a really small amount of money. And I think we're doing it like the thing is, it's proving to work. And I think if we can get the quality up and we can support people with car sharing, with improved active transport, and we can, like some of the stuff that came back around Tolly actually, which was really interesting, it's not the young people, it's the parents who have an issue with going to KGV. And the young people don't have that same barrier. And I think by us sort of not encouraging people to travel and experience other parts of the city, we're kind of siloing them and living into old prejudices. So yeah, that's my piece. Sorry, Jabba.
But I mean, parents do have genuine concerns about safety and their children travelling long distances. So you can understand it from a parent's perspective. Councillor Lamb.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 2 questions, and I think I'm going to reverse the order in which I'm going to ask them because of what has just been said. I mean, with both my hat on as a councillor for St John's and also as a children and young people's champion for the city, I share some of the concerns that have been articulated about the provision of youth services in Worcester, to be honest with you. And I'd like some clarifications, because if we take Dines Green, which you've identified as one of the 3 hubs in the city by which youth service is going to be provided, I understand, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, that Worcester Community Trust have stopped providing a youth service in Dines Green, and instead you're relying on volunteers from Hope Church. And those people are incredibly well-intentioned, but they're not trained youth workers. And frequently there are mistakes and errors that they make. And that has led to the suspension on a number of occasions of youth provision by Worcester Community Trust. And I know we've met, and I've met with you, and I've met with Richard and Robin, and we've expressed the view that, in the past, the youth provision in Dines Green was excellent because you had a really, really good coordinator in Alice, who was absolutely brilliant. Okay, I know we talk about her a lot, but she was excellent. And that high quality youth provision, as I see it, has not really existed since she's left. And I think that's got to be reversed. Something has got to be done about this, to be honest with you.
So, yeah, I share your sentiments about Hope Church. We dropped in some of our youth workers prior to this contract to try and help them improve it, to see if we could assist them with that. But there was just incredibly dangerous and risky practice going on there. It's still continuing, and we've been trying them to offer sort of advice and support in looking after their own safety. They really put themselves at risk. But it's we have been delivering in Dines Green as a full service since September. The challenge with Dines Green is there's some really serious antisocial and safety behaviours, so we do have to close it. It's the same across all our centres. If there's any misogyny, if there's any sexually violent language, if there's any overt drug dealing, if there is any intoxication, if there's any aggression or physical violence, then we close the session, but then we come back and we will co-create or we will have a conversation. Like of one of the serious things that happened at Dines Green, we closed for 2 weeks, but then came back. We kept the one-to-one mental health service on offer, but we came back and created a code of conduct with the group of young people there. So they need to have boundaries and consequences to what's acceptable behaviour, as in any environment, and that wasn't existing within Hope Church. We have a full provision in Dines Green, in the sense we have a weekly provision for young people and older people, and older young people. And we also have additional work that we do with the volunteers. We've spoken about particular employees, and I think it's something we do need to be really mindful of. That person was a bank worker and a centre manager, and we need to create professional boundaries and manage the mental health of what certain employees will contribute to an organisation. So what we're trying to do is create consistency and professionalism within our youth service, and that is slightly different to the fast and loose stuff that happened in the past, which was incredibly enjoyable and really well loved. But also we're taking our responsibility as an employer quite seriously, and the safety of the young people quite seriously. So we have to be really mindful about individuals who contribute their whole lives to particular projects, but then burn out and disappear, because that is a common thing that can happen within community organisations.
Can I just come back on that? And I think you touched on this earlier on. This is an issue about communication. And I think it's a general issue about this council, actually, that because we have all these arm's length services, which the council doesn't provide anymore directly, but are provided by third sector and voluntary organisations, and that's absolutely great. I don't think councillors are always kept in the loop about what's actually going on, you know, and this is the same with platform housing, it's the same with a number of providers that we work with. And what's frustrating is you say those things and that's it. But as a councillor, I don't get told about these things, to be honest with you. And I'm sure it might come as a bit of a surprise to Richard and Robin as well. And we all pride ourselves, I think, on having our ears to the ground and knowing what's going on in our community. But to be honest with you, some of the things you've said have come a bit as a surprise. And the problem with this kind of scrutiny is it happens once a year. You know, this is the kind of thing we should be kept in the loop about. You know, whether we can do something about it, because we don't control these things directly, I can't promise that, but just to know, because we do have links with the community, we do speak to community leaders. And so this is the kind of thing that we can then support you with. But if we don't know about it, then we can't. And that is frustrating, if I'm being brutally honest.
Can I come back on that? Just to talk about our accountability. We have a board meeting that meets quarterly. We invite the chair and the vice chair from this committee as representatives from the Communities Committee. So you have 4 opportunities and really heavily detailed information about what's going on, and those are your representatives. We also try and get observers from all parties to attend. It tends to be the leaders. I have recently realised that I haven't invited the Lib Dems, which I've now done, and make sure I will add there. So we have 4 points of accountability that go through the year, and then we have this one, which is around the justification for the management grant and the maintenance charges. That's a really specific thing. I think there is a need that I can send out an all parties briefing, because I think some of these things do come up quite regularly. Like, there's 14 councillors in the wards that we have buildings in. I did meet with Robin and I have met with Richard, and they are aware of the strategy is over 12 months old and they've banged on about it a lot. And so we have talked about it. But there is also, you have jobs and responsibilities that are outside of that. There's only so much I can do across my communication channels to try and keep you informed at a level relevant to the organisation. The main decision body and scrutiny takes place at the board because we're a charity and we aren't an arm's length organisation. We're a separate charity that delivers services within the city. So we do need to be really clear about that, because I require your support and your buy-in and your skills and your expertise as partners and sort of colleagues in trying to support the people with the least in the city. But when we have contracts with you about specific things which are run through the proper channels, but this isn't about a scrutiny of everything we do. It's really a celebration of all the different things we do. So I will work with you to find better ways of meeting up. But we have to be really mindful. With 14 different councillors, I thought about today, the first time when I started work, the last time I saw Bash was about a year ago. It's really hard to keep up with the frequency of that and to notify you of everything that we're doing. So just try and keep that in mind when you're thinking about how we can work together as well.
Yeah, just final point, and I want to finish with something positive. You know, it's really good to see the stuff in the report about building block 2, because, you know, politics is a bit of a rumour mill, and there were rumours swirling about the viability of building block 1, and I was very concerned that that might have an impact on building block 2 in Dines Green, because both as a councillor and from my professional background, I'm a big believer in the ongoing development of skills. You know, education and skills doesn't end when you're 18, it goes on for the rest of your life, as we all know. So building block 2, I think, is really, really important. I'm really glad that that's still going ahead on Dines Green, because I think it will be an excellent resource for the people in my ward. I suppose the question is when is this? I know it's going forward to policy and resources on the 6th, but when will this be completed? When will it be operating for the people of Dines Green?
As you said, it will go to the meeting next week. On approval there, we are at the point where we are ready to go out to procurement. Delivery is anticipated end of Feb, beginning of March 25.
March 25?
Yeah, yeah.
Pending.
Okay, thank you. I'll take the last two speakers, Councillor Orcott and Councillor Cooper.
Chair, yeah, just really quickly, obviously, just going back to the plan, your 3-year plan, and you talk about increases in income from 300 to 586 over the 3 years. I think just thinking about our smaller organisations and community people that obviously rent out, do you have advice or assurance, or will they have a different rate, or how will that work for them, please?
So the plan is to have one community rate across all the services. It's sort of tied very much to how much space we have, the costs of our staff and the costs of energy. So there's very little in the way of surplus being generated through that. It's just mitigating the costs of running the building, which is about £100,000 per building. What we are saying, and I think this is again like a citywide issue, we need to cultivate a wider culture of smaller social enterprises and groups. I think having sort of an oligarchy of like 3-4 large organisations has its challenges. And I think one of the things we are offering and working with people to do is around, we need to charge everyone the same thing because that's what it costs, but we will work with them, one, on a plan, because the scale of this is that we've got about 29 clients who receive over 50% discount that costs about £70,000 a year in unpaid bills. That's the thing we're working with at the moment, and they're all very different, and they've all been agreed at different points in time. And so we're trying to find something that's fair and equal, bearing in mind most of the people that book at the centre create social impact of one sort or another. What we won't do is put the prices up straight away, but we'll work with them over a 12-month period. But we'll also source funding for community organisations to be able to hire out the building. I think that's where we come in. Someone needs to pay for the building, and we will find someone who's funded. We will find funding from another organisation to support us with that.
Thank you. So I think if you are a community group, it's best to pick up with yourselves. And also, obviously, we've got the grants that are coming out now to look into those. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. You won't be surprised at my question. I just wondered, I'm really pleased to hear that you're thinking about sustainability in terms of lowering your energy costs. I wondered about your net zero aspirations, and I wondered if you had a carbon reduction plan. And I also very much approve of what you were saying about having more cycle provision, cycle parking at your centres, because actually most of the city can be cycled within 20 minutes. So I look forward to hearing your dates. Thank you.
So we are just approving next year's, you've seen last year's strategic objectives. Some of those will be updated around investing in the assets, whereas we were looking at getting a full centre concept drawing, like a sort of RAB stage 2 for all concepts. We realised it's really untenable with the amount of work we have to do. So we're focusing on particular projects. One of those projects is investing in the environmental improvements of the buildings. So we put in and we've received support for a carbon audit, like a carbon reduction audit of all 6 buildings, which we found out about yesterday, so that's news. That will be the start of it. Even though it's the most expensive, it's going to be trickier to do the psychological behavioural stuff. Things like single use, things like sort of packaged foods, things like convenience, things like the sort of food supply chain for some of the things we deliver. It's really, really ingrained in the way people live their lives that we haven't got the time to change. So I think the thing we are focused on around carbon reduction, we do genuinely have carbon zero aspirations. It'd be great if communities, I've seen a community centre do it in a place called Philwood, which is a working class community, very similar to Bronxwood actually, receive a really substantial sort of levelling up grant to be a leading model in VCSE organisation buildings. The reality is we will be doing everything retrospectively, so we won't necessarily be one of these flagship community centres. But it is we have 7 strategic objectives. It's one of those for the next year, and we're already pushing at it.
So just to clarify, you don't have a date for net zero set yet?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to sum up. There's a couple of points that haven't, I don't think, been picked up during the debate. One of the, and obviously some of the ladies at the back, Councillor Orcott, thank you for raising that question. Obviously, we just want to really be clear in terms of your charging strategy here. I mean, you say a community price. What does a community price look like, considering what you're recommending is 3 times the rate of inflation in terms of your charges, albeit deferred for 12 months. How did you come to that decision, or how did the board come to that decision? And what would you say to those users of those groups that that use your centres as a lifeline for mental health, and the groups that they're going? Will they be priced out of the market? Will they be forced to choose elsewhere? Will they disband? That's the first question. The second question is around your devolving power to the communities. I know that your predecessor, Ruth Haywood, came up with this plan, which was a pretty decent plan. It's yet to be realised, and I really do believe having that devolved power to the communities and having those community boards would have possibly saved a lot of questions here tonight, because you've had community involvement in your centres and they would have shaped the services going in those there. That's yet to happen. There's no sign of that being happen. It's in your plan. When is that going to be delivered? Because I think that is really, really crucial. And the final point is around obviously the disparity of youth services across the city. You talk about quality, yet within certain centres the quality isn't there. Equipment's missing, facilities aren't there, youth wings, etc., have materialised. And we know from our previous discussions 2 nights ago that there is a direct correlation between decrease in youth services or absence of youth services and increase in antisocial behaviour. I'm first-hand witness to that in Horizon, when we didn't have a youth service for the last three or 4 weeks until somebody new came in, that the calls to the police from local community members increased. So if you can address those 3, and I'll let you go. Right.
Okay, so the last one first. I mean, I think I've addressed it multiple times. The reality is, unless more money is brought into the city to deliver more, then we can't deliver more youth services. It's really as simple as that. It's not like we've got several £100,000. I'm not sure if, just to explain how a charity and our projects work, we have to raise money that has to be full cost recovery to deliver that project. And when that project finishes, we have to stop that project. We don't generate a surplus. That we have a reserves for running 4 months at the moment. I think the aspiration is for 4 months. We're about 3.5 months. And that's to make sure that there's protection outside of those projects of the delivery of the buildings. So the money we raise, like even with youth, we've stretched ourselves to the point of being able to deliver this strategy. You know, we've stretched ourselves by £30,000 to deliver that strategy. But when that money runs out, when those contracts runs out, that use stops. It's not like we've got money we're not spending on one thing or the other. So it's just to be really clear that as a charity, we don't generate income yet. Maybe we will in the future, that we can then therefore deliver services by. So that's just to add that to that one. The first one around raising our prices threefold above the inflation rate, we haven't changed our prices. All we've said is that we can't afford to give discounts of up to 86% anymore. Some people are getting it for free. Some people have got £1,000 week bookings and they pay £50 a night for them. One, that creates a sense of inequality between the different groups. If we are offering that level of discount, there needs to be an eligibility criteria that we are able to apply to all centres. So what we try to do, and bearing in mind, we've got one person on bookings, we've got one project manager, and then we have two people facilitating those bookings and some cleaners, is to create a simple community rate. So we haven't changed that rate. The community rate is exactly what's on the website. We haven't changed it. What we've done is tried to prepare people to know over the next 12 months, we need to raise them up to 100% without the discount. We offer 25% for people who key hold. And what we're saying is to have a conversation with us, and I've spoken to Mel already and invited Mel in to discuss this, as Ross would have as well, is we need to figure out a way that we can maybe use our other skills to raise money from yourselves, from the community funds. They're called discretionary funds or diversionary funds. We need to be able to look at other places because we can't afford to subsidise those. One of the things that's being set by this group, by this communities committee, on the basis of the management grant, is that we become full cost recovery. That's moving from £30,000 per centre income to £100,000 per centre. That is something that's being, and that I support, but it's something we need to do. Is there is reducing funds from your own kitty that's not going to be able to support that in the future. That has to come through action, you know, and that action is about bringing more money in. So we will work with people. That period is over 12 months. So the letters have gone out to all 29 people who are receiving over a 25% discount. And Ross and myself, or Ross and Jenny, will meet with everyone to talk about what that payment plan looks like and whether we can tie them in with other organisations, other funding, whether we can legally sort of form their organisation so they're able to access their own funding. It's like the Perrywoods community organisation. We need more of those in the city, and that's kind of what we're looking to do through this process. That's the answer to the first one. Yes. It needs a staff member. So we're doing some really good stuff in Dines and Warndon at the moment. We've got a contract with yourselves for community builders, and there is some really good work happening in those spaces. I would be completely open and up for a community forum, but we need to build them and we need to facilitate them properly. Again, it's the challenge of running Worcester Community Trust is we've got six of those. So we're not just, if we were running a community anchor organisation, which is typically an organisation such as Worcester Community Trust, but dealing to a neighbourhood, potentially a ward, so 4,500 to 10,000 people, then that would be quite easy to set up and facilitate. The challenge for us is how we do that for 6 people, how we get the right diverse mix of people within that forum, how we facilitate that properly. The way we aspire to do that across all centres is by having something that's separate from the community stuff, which is the centre managers, but then it's about having the community builders in there. And we've got Rachel in Dines Green at the moment, and we've got Gary in Warndon. And that's actually bearing a lot of fruit with how much connection and conversation we're able to have and how much presence there is within the centres. So again, it was something that was in the business plan before. It's about sort of test and learn. Like the 2 centres that we're testing and learning on that at the moment where we can iterate. Like that is something that whereas I've been quite cautious around saying that we will be able to expand our youth services across the city, we do genuinely want to spread that across that model across all different centres. It's the only way they're going to function, and we'll get people like Alice, or we'll get those front-facing people who can genuinely develop relationships on a place-based level. But you have to remember, each one of those people, with the on-cost is about £30,000 pounds, £180,000, you're never going to find a grant to support that for any continuity. So it does come back to money at the end of the day. If we had money, we would certainly be recruiting community builders that could facilitate the forums. The other question is, what kind of level do people want involved? How do they want to engage with us? And that's a conversation. One of the things I didn't want to set up, and I recognise it is the one place within our business plan that we didn't hit those strategic objectives. So we've really focused that, and we've remodelled the senior leadership team. So we now have a head of community-based services who has taken responsibility and focus on that. But it's just, it's an incredibly hard challenge for an organisation that manages 6 different community centres in 6 different neighbourhoods.
Thank you, John. Thank you. I really appreciate it, John. Have summed up beautifully in terms of communication and trying to make sure that there's that open channel there. Difficult for all, but hopefully that is the way forward. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, ladies. Really appreciate it. We have agenda item 6, Q3 performance report.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I won't spend too much time presenting this. It's the usual format. Just in terms of projects and actions, there's one project which is showing red, which is the Community Committee Capital Project. There's 2 projects there. One is the Colma Gardens Hall Association project, some investment into the top floor there. And the second one is the Elbury Mount Nature Reserve. In terms of Elbury Mount, Warwick is working with partner agencies to try and progress that one. And hopefully we will bring a report on Colma Gardens to March committee for you to consider. Most of our KPIs gladly are green. There are a couple of red there which relate to housing, which Tom would be happy to pick up any questions for. And Alan's here for any questions around sport and play as well.
Thank you. I'll open it up to the floor. Got Councillor Lamb, Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. This is a question for Tom, actually. On page 85, about the number of affordable housing completions, and I think I've expressed in this committee a couple of times previously how, I was a little bit disappointed by the number of affordable houses completed in Worcester compared to our target. But it has been pointed out to me, one of the problems with these statistics is that because of the boundaries of Worcester, where the development is taking place, for example, in my own ward, there's obviously a lot of development in Earls Court and University Park Drive. And those houses are not actually, strictly speaking, in Worcester, but they are providing affordable housing to Worcester residents. So I don't know if you know this, if we were to add up those houses, which are strictly speaking probably in Malvern Hills or in Wychavon, but are effectively Worcester residents, because this is the city they use, these are the community, the services they use, would we be any closer to 200? I don't know if you know that.
Probably won't be able to give a definitive answer. I mean, the narrative is in the performance indicator around units of accommodation that have been provided in the urban extension sites. So although the figure reported wouldn't include those properties, we've tried to include that in the narrative, and I think it's one of the performance indicators that we'd recommend reviewing next year to try and include those, because as you say, they do meet Worcester City housing need, so are relevant to this committee and to Worcester. The only comment I'd also raise is just this is an annual performance indicator, so although we do bring it to committee on a quarterly basis, things generally don't move or stick within quarters, so it has been set as an annual target.
Thank you. I mean, just on that point, there are cases there where we place from Worcester City in just over the border, so to speak. So, I mean, I can see Councillor Lamb's argument for including those figures. I mean, it doesn't excuse us from providing our own affordable housing, but it helps, I suppose, fudge the numbers in that sense. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. Three small things. I'd really like to praise the detached youth team for their work in antisocial behaviour within my ward. They've just amazing results, and I'm very grateful on behalf of my residents. A request for empty homes on the scorecard. I ask you so much, Tom, and you're so patient with me, so thank you. I wonder if that could be put in for next year, please. And on the minimum energy efficiency standards, there are several homes within my ward that don't have an EPC and are rented out illegally. I've done some work with Worcestershire Regulatory Services. They seem new to this work and they haven't got a lot of experience in it. But what they say to me is that this only works if the house has been, or flat has been rented within the last 6 months. So post that, there's nothing that can be done to deal with road landlords who don't have an EPC, which means that we don't know if they're meeting the minimum energy efficiency standards. And I just want to raise it as I think that's a real gap in this, and it's something I'm concerned about. Thank you.
Yeah, I suppose firstly on empty homes, I know you do raise it at each committee. We have highlighted that, and we're due to bring an update report on private sector housing to the next committee, and we've included a section on empty homes within that report, so hopefully that will help provide a bit more information around our work surrounding that. I mean, in terms of EPCs, where properties don't have EPCs, it isn't a function of this district council, so it's certainly something we could pick up a discussion about with trading standards around what more can be done, but I can't make any firm commitment ourselves as to how we might be able to plug that gap.
Thank you. Councillor Amos.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My question is on page 89, but related to page 93. And obviously it's from Mr. Mountford, I would guess. What if you could elaborate a bit on the last paragraph where he says, et cetera, and an increase in the number of refugee approaches represent a challenge to achieving these objectives. And then on page 93, it's related because he then refers to the private rented sector, which says cost of living, et cetera, has made this sector even less accessible and affordable. If you put those two things together, there are bigger questions there. So could Mr. Mountford just elaborate on that?
Yeah, sorry, which performance indicators are you referencing? Sorry.
Page 89.
Sorry, I'm not understanding.
Yeah, page 89, the last paragraph.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reference to it is essentially an increase in. I think that essentially it's around an increase in demand cumulatively. We are seeing more people approach generally as a result of a number of factors. So as a result of the cost of living crisis, increase in landlords issuing Section 21 notices, as well as we're dealing with the Home to Ukraine schemes, so people that are now settling within the city, is more people and more demand on the service essentially.
Thank you. Then if we just extend it a bit further to the table on page 93 about private rented accommodation, you're quite right, you're saying, I think we all know this anyway, this sector is even less accessible and affordable than it was. So the scheme whereby we've agreed to take up to 100 illegal immigrants, which I understand are going to be accommodated in the private sector. How will that work?
Councillor Amos, I believe there are asylum seekers.
Chair, just to clarify, what this committee approved was us accommodating up to, from memory, 66 asylum seekers, utilising 20 or so properties from the private sector. So Circle would do that. And we've been made aware of 2 properties that have been utilised for that purpose.
Yeah, but my question is about the demand on the private rented sector. That's the point. The demand is great, we know that. If you put another demand on it, I'm trying to say, well, where does it burst? I mean, what's happening if you can't keep putting up a quart into a pint pot?
So within the original report, the decision was taken on the advice that utilising that number of properties wouldn't have an undue effect on the private rented sector in Worcester.
Repeat that answer, please. Perhaps it's a microphone, I don't know.
So the decision that was taken by this committee in approving us accommodating that number of asylum seekers, the advice was that with the use of, I can't remember how many properties it was offhand, 15, 20 properties, that wouldn't unduly impact the private rented sector within Worcester.
Yes, well, that's my question, isn't it? I mean, the impact on the private rented sector, we're told that it's under enormous pressure. There's another pressure to be put on it, and I'm trying to find out what the consequences is for the generality of the demand. You can't magic up supply while the demand's increasing. That's my concern. What are the consequences of this? If something's full and you put more in, what's the consequence?
According to this report, correct me if I'm wrong, on page 93, the demand for the private rent sector has actually decreased, hasn't it? So there hasn't been an increase in pressure on that sector. So I don't quite understand the question, but I'm sure Tom and Lloyd will be able to get something in writing for you. Alan, is that okay? Yeah.
Well, I'm happy with that, Chair, but I'm surprised they don't know the answer now. It's not a particularly unexpected question, is it?
Chair, if there's more pressure on the private rented sector, it makes access harder for tenants and residents of all types. So that's the only answer I can provide to Councillor Amos. And what I would say on the asylum seeker properties is, if there is a challenge in Circle procuring property, then they may look elsewhere to procure property. It may not be Worcester, it may be other areas.
My final point, Chair. Well, where are we on that scheme then? The Circle Home Office, what accommodation have they taken up so far? Nobody seems to know what's going on with that sector, but we have committed to providing those number of places. That's my concern.
To repeat my answer from a couple of minutes ago, Chair, Circle have procured 2 properties in Worcester as part of that scheme.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers on this item? No. Just want to make a general observation in terms of obviously the amount of affordable homes that were, or the lack of affordable homes that are available, and the numbers of people of on the housing waiting list. I mean, there's only so much we can do in terms of that, and obviously we're not in a position to build our own houses en masse at that level. So it's really, really crucial that the planning system plays its part in enabling us to be able to provide those houses for Worcester residents and Worcester people that are on that housing waiting register. And that means that each and every individual councillor, when planning applications come into their wards, they have to be really pragmatic. We can't solve a problem yet then deny plausible or applications within each of our wards that are looking to provide that accommodation. So I just really ask councillors to be pragmatic in their own wards when planning applications that come in that help us to achieve the objective that we're trying to achieve. We can't be at war with each other on the one hand saying that we want to provide all these housing, we've got to do more, yet at every opportunity we're batting those opportunities away. Thank you. Okay, we have agenda item 7.
Chair, I do beg your pardon, but is it something that we should be noting? I'm very sorry.
The recommendation is that the community notes the council Q3 performance for 23-24 and the performance reporting framework. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Patel. Agenda item 7, which is the setting for the budget for the 24-25 and the MTFP. Shane?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. This is the final formal stage for the committee in terms of developing this year's budget. Appendix 1 shows the revenue budgets which are built into the medium-term financial plan going forward, and there are no substantial changes from the draft budget that we viewed in the early November meeting. So there's nothing substantial that's changed there. We have a proposal to take forward £1.8 million net spend in terms of the remit of this committee. Appendix 2 shows the capital programme for the council as a whole, so that's just for information to see the major pieces of work which we're intending to take forward next year. And the final appendix just shows the overall picture, and members will see from the bottom line of that we have a forecast budget gap of £452,000, which is substantially less than it was this time last year. So I'd like to thank everybody for their contributions to that, which has been really, really helpful. The other purpose of this stage is, again, to receive any new proposals that there may be to take forward to Policy and Resources Committee next Tuesday for consideration for taking forward into the budget. These can come forward now or as part of other agenda items on the committee. And of course, members have, can individually take forward items to Policy and Resources or to full council when we get there on the 20th of February. So this is not the last opportunity, but this is the point where we usually see if there are any other items that you want to carry forward to Policy and Resources Committee next week. Thank you, Chair. Any questions or proposals? I'll happily.
Yeah, thank you. Can I open it up to the floor then, please? Please, Councillor Amos.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's on Appendix 1, the first line. I obviously, something I don't understand, Mr. Flynn, I'm sure can make it absolutely clear. But under the section on employees, base budget for this year, 23-4, is 1.5 million. The draft base budget for 24-5 is 2.1 million. That's, I make it a 33% increase. I've obviously missed something. So can Mr. Flynn please clarify for me?
Yes, through you, Chair. If I could point you towards an item lower down in that column, which is grants and contributions, 538,000. Yeah, so you can see compared to the previous year, that was just 70,000. So in other words, the expenditure on employees has gone up by about 500,000, and the grants and contributions income has gone up by about the same amount. And the reason for this is that we have in the past tended to use the homelessness support grant as a separate item in terms of budgeting, which pays for quite a wide number of salaries which are involved in supporting homelessness. Whereas what we're trying to do is to ensure that all of that income is shown as coming into the budget, and the matching expenditure is also shown within the budget. So it's a change in approach in terms of how we manage the homelessness support funding, which is normally done separately to the, because it doesn't come as part of the settlement, it's agreed separately. So we've always in the past tended to treat it in a separate way. So it's a little bit outside of this process. And I've decided this year that we're going to do that more explicitly and show it gross within the budget. So that's the change. There's a growth in terms of costs, there's a growth in terms of income, and they match each other up.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just clarify then, Mr. Flynn? So we're using grants to actually pay people, because obviously a grant is normally fixed. It's not endless, but presumably the member of the staff then, their length of service is commensurate with the length of the grant. Is that what you're saying, or I misunderstood?
Through you, Chair, that is, most of the costs within there are for fixed term posts, yes. But there are some which are ongoing revenue funding, and we are therefore relying on future grants to continue those. In the event that we don't get those grants, well then council will have to make a decision about how to fund those in the future. But the vast majority of them are on fixed term posts. Yeah.
Are there any other speakers on the item? No? Okay, so can we take the recommendations? 1.1 to 1.4. All those in favour? Agreed. Thank you. Agenda item number 8, review of funding arrangements for the Worcester Play Council. Alan?
Thank you very much, Chair. This is a follow-up report to a previous report that was tabled back in January of last year to this committee. It is an update on the progress that's been made within that period. Since the last report was presented, council officers have met with the Board of Trustees at the Play Council back in April of last year, and this was to raise a number of concerns with the lack of input that was actually being undertaken by the Play Council in terms of service delivery. So at this meeting, the council officers discussed a number of issues around the kind of reporting process and performance with the representatives from the Play Council, and it was explained that no guarantee of any future funding would be provided by the council to support any future play activities. Essentially, the Play Council has 3 primary functions, and those 3 functions are to actually deliver the play service, and this function has been subcontracted to a kind of another provider for a period of the last 5 years or more. So there's no direct provision in that respect. The second element is to raise alternative funding sources, and unfortunately that hasn't been delivered during the period either. And the third one, which links to the second one, is the fact that any funding that is raised should then be redistributed to local community groups for them to deliver their own play activities. And obviously on the basis of the second point not being delivered, the third one couldn't be delivered either. So on that basis, the conversation took place, and there were a number of suggestions made, and over the intervening period, no further support and information has been provided to eradicate the kind of concerns of council officers. I think it's important to point out here that what we're actually doing is we're taking a review of a process that's been in place for a number of years back from the 1980s. And essentially we're kind of taking out a layer of complexity, because essentially the play provision in the city that's taken place over recent years has been delivered directly by Purdeswell Young People's Club. So essentially, although we've been giving the funding directly to the Play Council, that immediately has then been passported across to Purdeswell Young People's Club to deliver the outcomes. So in reality, what we're recommending within the report now is that we kind of make that a bit more formal, and we're in a position where financially we aren't able to support to the level that we've supported in previous years as an authority. But what we can do is offer some further grants through the community grants programme to allow organisations such as Purdeswell Young People's Club and any other kind of young people's organisations that provide play provision to make an application into the council for funding for them to deliver play activities in that way. Thank you.
Okay, can I open it up to the floor, please? Any speakers on this? Councillor Collier.
My first question, were any of the trustees of Worcester Play Council asked to be in attendance tonight at this meeting?
No is the answer to that question.
I have another, this is more of a comment than anything else. I have been in the last couple of months involved in some discussions with some of the individuals in Worcester Play Council, and so for those reasons I'll unfortunately be abstaining from this vote. I think it's really interesting that we've talked at length about youth services tonight, and actually looking back at the Charity Commission for Worcester Play Council, one of the aims is to provide advocacy. And what I see as really clear in the city is this genuine gap for, I can't quite work out what the shape of the organisation will be, but some clear voice that's doing this advocacy and pulling together services so that we can help identify these gaps that we talked about this evening, and we can really champion what young people need. And so I have no question or solution, but I'm saying I think I raise that that's something missing, and that originally was my hope that could have been the role that something like Worcester Play Council could have been fulfilling.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Orcott.
Chair, thank you. Just to mention, obviously, really briefly as well, I know we think about the city and play, but I think youth and young people, it has suffered a lot from the county council and the complete lack of funding over time. That's just dropped right off, and I think, you know, that they are a lot to blame for this. And I appreciate they haven't always had the money, but it has had a big impact, and it's been, you know, it's been coming for a long time. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, it's not very positive. But just... That's
all right, Councillor Orcott. I mean, it's a sad state of affairs, isn't it, that it has come to this, and that actually effectively an organisation we helped set up back in all that time ago has effectively become redundant and become a commissioning organisation that isn't fulfilling its original purpose, and that we've had to take this drastic measure. I mean, what I am more worried about is actually the fact that we've had the debate earlier on this about youth services, and what I am worried about is that effectively this is now a £10,000 cut in the youth service play provision within the city. Hence, my proposal is to put an amendment in to this organisation, if the committee agrees, and I have a seconder, I put an extra line in there, that the £10,000 that isn't going to be now allocated to the Worcester Play Council is ring-fenced for youth play provision via a specific grant for any application from a city organisation to come forward and apply for that money to provide youth provision as to that. So whether that would be something somebody would second and would get agreement on.
Chair, Shane may just want to clarify the origin of last year's finance and perhaps why that it can't be ring-fenced.
Okay.
Yes, Chair, thank you. The grant previously came from the Community Grants Fund, so it was a one-off allocation for that year only. So it's not a line in the budget which is carrying forward, so it's not being reallocated. What you're proposing in effect is a new fund, a new reserve, which would have to be charged to our risk reserves, just to be clear about that. Yeah.
So the wording would be that the money comes from the risk reserve, yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, Chair. So it would go through as a recommendation of Policy and Resources to consider allocation from the risk reserve for this purpose. Yeah.
How does that sound? Is that okay? So all those in favour of the recommendation, including the new proposal that £10,000 be allocated from the risk reserve towards youth play via a grant scheme specific for organisations that could go.
Sorry, Chair. Just in terms of the order, we need to have a debate on that amendment. If you're proposing that as an amendment, then a consideration as to whether members accept that amendment or not, and then we default to the main recommendation.
So can I have a seconder first, and then we'll open it up to debate? Councillor Collier? Fine, so that's formally seconded, and can we have a debate on that amendment, please? Councillor Cooper?
I don't think there's anything to debate. I think it's fantastic. I would wholly recommend supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more speakers? Okay, so we take a vote to make this the substantive motion. All those in favour? And we take a second vote to agree the recommendation that has been agreed. All those in favour? Agreed.
Can I just clarify then, if I put that in as youth play provision, is that sufficient? Yeah.
Agenda item 9, Council of Sanctuary. John.
Thank you, Chair. So just provide a bit of context around what the Council of Sanctuary is and how this came about. So a motion was brought to Council in October last year, which resolved that the Communities Committee should consider the implications of Worcester City Council becoming a Council of Sanctuary, working with others already involved in working with refugees seeking asylum in Worcester. Across the country, there's 54 councils have passed sanctuary motions, and there's 6 councils that have progressed on to becoming councils of sanctuary. City of Sanctuary UK is the umbrella organisation that provides support to networks and community groups that are working towards supporting people seeking sanctuary, and that includes local authorities. Support is provided through collaboration, training, engagement, opportunities, and working with people with lived experience of the asylum system. Whilst networks have the flexibility to determine how best to work towards their own vision based on the local context and priorities, there are a set of principles to follow, which are set out in section 2.7 of the report. So in terms of the process, the initial stage is for a council to pass a full motion, which this council has already done. It's then been referred to this committee, where the recommendation tonight is to endorse the City of Sanctuary Charter, which is attached as Appendix 1 to the report, and then working towards the City of Sanctuary Local Authority Award, with the ultimate aim of becoming a recognised Council of Sanctuary. The Council would then join the network as a member and engage with the City of Sanctuary local groups, working with providers, people with lived experience, and with the wider network. Through that work, that would lead to the development of an action plan describing how the minimum City of Sanctuary criteria would be met in Worcester. Once the plan is developed, in consultation with local refugee groups and organisations representing them, the council can then apply to become a recognised Council of Sanctuary. There is a cost to doing so, which is £500 per year, and that's to provide more tailored support through the final stages of the application process. Just to provide a bit of context around the asylum and resettlement system. So the Home Office lead on the National Asylum Dispersal Programme across the UK. They work in conjunction with Serco in the West Midlands, including within Worcester, and they facilitate and manage contingency and dispersal accommodation. Migrant Help are the Commission service that provide localised support to asylum seekers, as well as local third sector organisations such as Worcester City Welcomes Refugees, who also provide advice, assistance and support. Worcester has a number of organisations and charities and community groups that provide support to new arrivals. That includes Worcester City Welcomes Refugees, Midland Migration Support Centre, MAGS, as well as numerous others. Worcester City Welcomes Refugees has already registered with the City of Sanctuary UK and have an existing network across the city and experience of surrounding resettlement support. They've worked with a number of the other resettlement schemes delivered through County Council. The county lead on resettlement programmes across the county, and there would be an important partner in supporting the city's aspiration in establishing local networks and pursuing recognition as a council of sanctuary. And they will be seeking to take a motion to County Council to apply to become a council of sanctuary themselves. As part of that, they'll be seeking, calling on district councils to consider pursuing this also. And I suppose what's notable is that Worcester City Council are sort of ahead of the curve, if you like, and have already proposed a motion before anybody else within the county. In order to deliver on the pledge to become a council of sanctuary and meet the relevant criteria, what we do recognise is that will require time and resource to be able to deliver that. And that, as such, has been included as a recommendation within the report. Conversations have been had with other local authorities that have progressed through to adopting to become councils of sanctuary, as well as working with the City of Sanctuary UK organisation. What they've highlighted as some of the benefits of becoming a council of sanctuary or progressing along the journey to becoming a council of sanctuary includes improvements around community cohesion, community safety, and reductions in the risk of exploitation. It can ensure that barriers to systems and services such as housing, employment, education and health are improved, and ensure that new arrivals are given the best opportunity to develop and utilise their skills and to positively contribute to society and the local economy. So I suppose essentially by investing to improve access and inclusivity to existing systems, removing barriers to services by addressing inequalities, and adopting an early intervention and prevention model, it can reduce the more costly and less successful interventions. So by way of an example, providing a clear pathway to housing options for eligible refugees could reduce individuals facing rough sleeping, facing increased risks of exploitation, and sort of negative health outcomes. Leave it there, Chair.
Thank you, Tom. Before I open it up to the floor, can I just ask, I have mentioned this point before in terms of how well we do as a city already in a lot of the things that are in this Council of Sanctuary. So really, I really want to know what added benefit this is going to bring to the City of Worcester on top of what we're already doing, rather than just being a gold standard to achieve. What else will it bring to the residents of Worcester and to the City of Worcester? I really want that a clear explanation regarding that.
I think essentially it is a commitment. It is a sort of commitment and to seek a recognition of the work that's undertaken. I think it can lead to more action. So by the council taking, I suppose an ambassadorial role within the city, it can lead to other organisations coming on board. So the City of Sanctuary UK doesn't just relate to local authorities. In fact, local authorities are one of the smaller groups of organisations that adopt or make the pledge. So there's many community groups, universities, schools, libraries, all of which can sort of progress through recognition as organisations of sanctuary. And I think sort of leading the way in that is an important step. The only organisation within Worcester at the moment that's registered is Worcester City Welcomes Refugees, and I think there's opportunity to increase that across the city. I think the benefits that then can realise ultimately are better access to services, and it is around trying to trying to improve things before there's a need for them, and it's trying to sort of apply that across the council, across the city as far as possible.
Yeah, thank you. Just before one more question. I mean, you mentioned Worcester City Refugees being as the only only member group that's been recognised by the City of Sanctuary. Funnily enough, I was speaking to the chair of Worcester City Refugees Group this afternoon, and he hasn't been involved in any of the consultations or work of that's gone around this. And I was just wondering, has there been a breakdown in communication, and how far has our consultation gone between all these groups that we're talking about? Has it been just a tunnel vision, from a couple of members that have been driving this, and what genuine consultation there has been out in the community?
Yeah, I mean, I have met with Worcester City Welcomes Refugees and been in regular email contact with them, so I'm not sure what the breakdown in communication is there. Discussed the proposal that's going to be coming forward tonight. So as far as I was aware, they were well briefed and understood of where we were at and what we were proposing to take forward. I mean, I think this work hasn't yet progressed, I suppose. So at this stage, it is around seeking approval or the commitment from the committee around whether it is something that we want to progress or not. And subject to the outcome of tonight, I think that's where the sort of work will start essentially.
Thank you. We've got Councillor Amos, Councillor Lawrenson.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, can I congratulate you, because it won't do any good politically, but can I congratulate you because your initial question is exactly the question to ask. What difference does this make to anything that we've already been doing? And I find this report, frankly, ill-conceived and muddled, and I think Mr. Mountford's answer to your question was muddled. And to be honest, I really don't understand what it was. When Putin invaded Ukraine, I was one of the first councillors publicly to say we should open our doors to the Ukrainian refugees. Women, children, men stood behind to fight for the survival of their country, but the women and children came over here. I welcomed them. I still welcome them. And it was the right decision. They've blended into the community. They're part of the community. They go out to work, go to schools. They're lovely people, and I welcome them. And in people in that situation, I would always welcome. But there is a difference, which does not come out in this report. There's a difference between a refugee and an immigrant. Many of the Ukrainians want actually to go home. The reason they don't is because they can't, because their houses aren't there anymore, or because there's still a war zone. So that's understandable, so we welcome them. I'd like to repeat the question, Chair. Perhaps we'll get the same answer or a different answer as to what difference is this going to make. I understand also that there are just 6 councils of sanctuary, 6. Out of how many cities and towns have we got? Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. The other point, Chair, is this. We're talking about upwards of £90,000. Now, if some of the money is coming from another budget, because that budget doesn't need the money, then put the money back into the pot. Don't spend it on something else just because we've got the money. That is exactly not the way to run a council. If we don't need the money, put it back. My constituents in Bedwardine are more concerned about clean roads, litter, dog's mess, gulls. If we've got £90,000 to spend it on the services that matter to people. This does not matter to people, and they don't know what it's about. To be honest, Chair, this is almost certainly going to be certain people talking to each other at the same meetings. We talk about networks and phrases like, and I've noted, I won't read them all out because there are too many of them. Independent assessment we've got. I don't know what's being independently assessed. It just says independent assessment. Paragraph 2.7, sorry, 2.8.8, independent assessment. I don't know what that's about. And Chair, this is a very important point. We should learn from other people who have gone down this road. Take the United States. They have sanctuary cities. What's happened there is, given the openness of the border, governors in the southern states are sending their immigrants who have come over the border to the sanctuary cities, because they're saying, well, look, your sanctuary city, you have a particular interest and a particular welcome for these people, so we're sending them to you. New York now has a budget deficit of £129 million and is asking for federal assistance because it cannot cope. It has literally nowhere to put them. And what's not in this report, Chair, and that's one of the reasons I asked the two questions earlier and left at that point, the questions answered at that point, was because where is the accommodation going to be? Where are the spare doctor surgery places? Farrier Street surgery has just been closed. Where are the hospital places? Where are the schools? And the reason I ask that, Chair, is because if you're going to be a city of sanctuary, you're going to have certain responsibilities placed upon you. Otherwise, why be it? And what are those responsibilities? What message are we sending out? We are sending out a message that we have a particular provision or a particular welcome or a particular desire to welcome refugees, immigrants, asylum seekers, call them whatever you will, it doesn't really matter. It's people coming in, it's numbers. And there's nothing in this report which addresses that problem. But we do know from a previous report that we discussed that we have a shortage, desperate shortage of private rented housing, and that refugees already are becoming a problem in terms of allocating other people. So in conclusion, Chair, I will not support this at all. The people, I may be a lone voice on this committee, I don't mind being that, but the point is, Chair, the vast majority of the people of Worcester will not support this at all. If I go on the doorstep, as I will, and I'll say to people, the council's got 90,000 quid to spare, guess what it's done? We're going to become a council of sanctuary. Oh, well done. It's the top priority. I've always wanted that, Alan. Thanks very much. Great stuff. I mean, it's an insult, Chair, at the time of a cost of living crisis. We're talking about housing shortages, but the streets aren't clean. Every time I want a new litter bin, I have to have a battle about it because we haven't got the money. This 90,000 is a grotesque waste of money, and I will never support this at all. And it's a disgrace that it's even come this far.
Thank you. I believe it's been agreed at full council, with the support of full council. Okay, thank you. Councillor Lawrenson and then Przewalski.
Wow, well, I had a genuine question lined up, but obviously I need to rebut the nonsense we just heard. Because the sole reason that this meeting is presumably being broadcast and available to be watched later on, this isn't just a gesture, but if you were to take it as just a gesture, it's an extremely important one, given the conflict raging in the world right now. So it's the complete reverse of what you've just ranted on about. As a gesture, it's hugely important, never been more important. So I completely rebut what we've just heard. And I'm actually shocked, despite having known Councillor Amos for the last 12 years. So that's the first contribution from me at this point. To counter what we just heard, absolutely not right at all. I calm the heart rate. The question, so, I was proud to second the motion at full council. I'm proud that Councillor Petrovsky brought this scheme to my attention. Very proud indeed. But Chair, you asked the question, very reasonable question, and I agree with you on that point. It was a great question from the Chair to the officer. What is the tangible impact? Because okay, you have a debate on the doorstep. What benefit to Worcester will this bring? I mean, the benefit is to the people in need, refugees, human beings, I prefer to call them. I mean, the money is coming from two pots, two sources of funding: dispersal accommodation grant and Homes for Ukraine grant. So there's money to be used to effectively continue good practice. The question is, from me, is that money purely going to be spent on a part-time officer for 3 years to submit an application, or is the money going to be used to provide tangible support as well as write the application? And second question, assuming that we get Council of Sanctuary status, and I hope it doesn't take 3 years, would that Council of Sanctuary status potentially bring in more grant funding and effectively pay for itself? So 3 things. 1, to counter the nonsense we've just heard. 2, will it truly take 3 years to apply for that council sanctuary status? And 3, assuming that we get it, will it bring in more financial resources to support people who have absolutely nothing? Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for those questions. I mean, on the first one, in terms of how long it will take, yeah, the intention isn't that the post will just be focused on making the application. It is around embedding what's been picked up and what's been highlighted through the action plan. So it's beyond making the application, it's about delivery. But what we need is a resource to be able to drive that forward. We can create an action plan, but unless we've got something to be able to make sure that moves into delivery and is supporting groups and working with organisations across the city, it's likely not to progress. And then I'd question that, you know, is it going to be meaningful? Is it going to be long lasting? And what are the impacts of it going to be? On the second question, the answer is I don't know. So there's nothing attached to it that means you would guarantee additional funding, funding around asylum dispersal or resettlement schemes. It isn't generally linked to anything like this. It's around populations, it's around where the Home Office have placed individuals' numbers. So I certainly wouldn't expect it to be linked to funding.
Thank you, Councillor Puchalski.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you to colleagues for their contributions. Just the first thing to Councillor Amos, I'm one of the Bedwardine residents. We can have a discussion about migration, refugees and so on. You'll be more than welcome to see me in my house for tea, biscuits and so on. And I think I'll be actually, and it's not because I proposed this motion, I'll be quite happy to defend it, but I think it's important we start talking with pride about certain things that make us human. So what difference does it make? The chair was asking this question. Well, I think if we consider the group of Malayali gentlemen who are here, putting Worcester on the global map, going to America. By the way, I'm not only a proud resident of Bedwardine, I'm also somebody who lived 10 years in America, and my experience of immigration and how people from different parts of the world are welcomed there is very different to some, you know, tabloids might describe. So it's a first-hand direct experience. So I think it's finally something we should be proud of. And rather than, yes, of course, there were certain things, and colleagues from Worcester Welcomes Refugees have mentioned this. By the way, I did tell them about the meeting today as early as Monday, so I'm not sure what the breakdown in communication was. But it's a genuine opportunity for us, not only to be, you know, to be doing things in the open, being proud about it, but also to be connecting with not only cities here, but also cities elsewhere in the world, where we can learn from colleagues and friends all over the world how important it is to maintain this very basic level of humanity, decency, and you know, things that make us human, quite frankly. I hate to bring economics into this, but you know, myself and many others, including people who might be caring for us in the hospice down the road, nurses, and all the people mentioned by Father Brian. One interest not declared. I'm his parishioner, so I better watch out my words today, because he's gonna talk to me afterwards. I'm very proud that we as a city make a statement. This is about a statement and about a badge, and a badge that we should be wearing very proudly. in terms of, but you know, all those things about economies and whatever are quite important. I'm happy to have a private conversation with Councillor Amos what I happen, you know, or you know what we do or I do for white British working class on a daily basis in my daytime job. But you know, the biggest piece of motivation that I got before the meeting today wasn't necessarily from the colleagues, from doing research, from whatever, but was from my little girl who said, "Daddy, I like your jumper." So, not sure if you can see it. It says, "Migration is not a crime." It has Paddington Bear on it.
Green is my favourite colour.
Sorry?
Green is my favourite colour.
Well, we can talk about the sort of party allegiances maybe at some stage. But what I would like to say is I'm genuinely proud to have this in front of us. It makes all kinds of sense. I'm super grateful to Tom, and I'm sorry I'm probably one of those people who from time to time contribute to you know by giving you guys grief. But it's a job well done. We should be proud of it, and I think the one difference, because Councillor Amos mentioned something, I must say this because this is so obvious. The difference between refugees from Ukraine, and just to say, the Conservative government advised Ukrainians fleeing war and bombs and everything else to apply for seasonal workers visas, to pick our fruit and veg. That was the first response. Not good enough, ladies and gents. So I tell you what the difference is. It's the skin color. That's what the difference is. So I'll leave it without comments. As I said, I'm going to go home, and it's too late now, but I'll tell my girl that I did the right thing today. Thank you.
Some really poignant points there, Councillor Petrowski. Saying it as it is. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. Tom has said what I was thinking, and I'm sure lots of people in this room were thinking, that actually it doesn't matter what colour someone's skin is. If they're a refugee and they're fleeing their home, I would like to think we're proudly welcome here in Worcester. I am thankful that the Malayali community left and didn't hear those rather disgusting remarks. On Monday, I was here at the Holocaust Memorial Day, and it was an incredibly moving day. I'm sorry there weren't more of us in this room there, because they were saying, you know, don't think this will never happen to us. It could easily happen to us, and it's starting to happen now. I would like to think that if ever I needed to flee my home and move to another country, that someone would welcome me. And I think that's what we need to think about. I'm really proud that I know some amazing refugees that have come from Ukraine, and I think we need to welcome them all, no matter their skin colour, to our wonderful, beautiful city. And I think we should vote for this, and I think we should be proud to do so. Thank you.
Chair, on a point of order, it's a shame to hear Councillor Cooper, a new councillor, make a comment like that. Disgusting comments. You may disagree with them, Councillor Cooper. You're right. We're here to have a debate. We're here to express opinions. But is it in order, Chair, to make a comment like that when we're having a reasonably civilised debate? Disagree, yes, but don't descend to personal comments.
Councillor Cooper, I'll give you a right to reply on that.
Chair, please accept my apologies if I named any individual. That was not my intention to name any individual. Thank you.
Is that apology accepted, Councillor Amos?
I'll leave it there, Chair, but it's not, yeah, it wasn't necessary.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. I realise passions are running high. If you can remain within the spirit of the committee, that would be really appreciated. But it doesn't prevent you from making your point in other ways. Thank you. Councillor Ali.
Thank you, Chair. It may sound a bit silly, but it's just to make clear that members of the public here need to be aware of the difference between migrants, illegal migrants, asylum seekers, refugees. But if we talk, if we say it doesn't matter, it can cause problems. I'm migrant. I'm proud to be immigrant. I'm contributing to this country. I'm not a burden on anybody, but general public doesn't know. We need to be really careful. It can increase hate crime, Islamophobia, and things like that. So I'm just requesting in general, all members, please be careful. Don't say it doesn't matter what category it is. It does matter. And just to clear, an asylum seeker is a person who has left their country and is seeking protection from prosecution, a serious human rights violation in another country, but who hasn't yet been illegally recognized as a refugee and is waiting to receive a decision on their asylum claim. Seeking asylum is a human right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. Councillor Altaf.
To welcome Worcester City and have this Worcester City on the map, to show people there's no racism. It doesn't matter if it's asylum seeker, it doesn't mean if it's a refugees, we should welcome all around the world to come and stay here and put Worcestershire on the map.
Thank you, Councillor Altaf, for your words on that. Do we have any more speakers on this? No? We'll go to the recommendations then. Okay, so the recommendations are that the committee endorses the City of Sanctuary Charter, and number 2 agrees to commit the allocation of £86,505.15 from the Homes for Ukraine Dispersal Accommodation Grant. All those in favour of both of those recommendations? Any abstentions? Any against?
Can I have my name recorded, please, John?
Of course, if you want, it's fine. Not a problem. That's carried. Thank you. We have agenda item number 10, which is Worcester City Faith Covenant.
Thank you, Chair. So at Council in September last year, the Chair of Communities Committee received a question to invite representatives from Worcestershire Interfaith Forum to consider the impacts and potential of Worcester City Council adopting a faith covenant. The Chair resolved for consideration to be given to how it will work in practice and what it means for the citizens of Worcester, which this report sets out to address. Faith covenant is a joint commitment between faith communities and local authorities to a set of principles that guide engagement, aiming to promote open, practical working on all levels. It was a concept that was introduced in 2014 by an all-party parliamentary group on faith and society in collaboration with an organisation called Faith Action, which is a national network of faith-based and community organisations. The outcome was that they concluded that faith groups have a great deal to offer as providers and advocates for communities in which they serve, and that some of their potential is being unnecessarily overlooked at present. To date, 30 local authorities have signed faith covenants across the country. Covenant provides assurance for local authorities when commissioning services from and transferring assets to appropriately qualified faith-based organisations, and include faith groups when they look for solutions to social needs. A faith covenant is built on 4 key principles set out in section 2.5 of the report, and entails commitments for both local authorities and faith-based organisations, which are outlined in sections 2.7 and 2.8, but are primarily focused around building relationships, developing opportunities for collaboration, as well as sharing learning This approach closely aligns to the Council's existing asset-based approaches to community engagement and development. And the adoption of a faith covenant can offer a number of opportunities, including building capacity for service delivery, engaging with diverse populations who may not otherwise access or engage with other or existing organisations, and to build on and regain the successful collaboration that was developed during the pandemic. The recommended process for adopting a faith covenant is to initially establish a steering group made up of officers from appropriate service areas across the council, members as well as faith groups to provide a diverse range of viewpoints. The group would then set out to develop the scope, the aims, the vision and the outcomes that the faith covenant in Worcester is seeking to achieve, and consider the most appropriate model to reflect the local context. So it's not just it's not a standardised approach across the country. Once a covenant has been developed, it should be launched through an event to exercise and promote the benefits of having a faith covenant in the city. So adopting a faith covenant is a means of making a clear commitment to working with faith-based organisations and acknowledging the role that they play within communities in Worcester, recognising their often unique position, access to individuals and groups that may not be engaged elsewhere, where they may be best placed to deliver services or support with projects and programmes of work.
Thank you. I'll put it out to the floor. I have got a couple of questions at the end for you, Tom. Councillor Pszczowski.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I'd like to apologise to officers, actually, because I read the report some days ago when I initially spoke to Tom, but I didn't notice something which I think warrants an amendment, and I can explain if that's okay. So what I would like to propose in 3.7, I don't think we need that, because it talks about the avenues of support. So basically, the bits that make the faith covenant work, what we promise to do. It then goes on to say, should only be considered if members are completely satisfied that the Worcester. I'm very sorry, I'm on the wrong paper, am I not? I think I'm on the wrong paper. Please ignore me. I'm happy to speak in favour of the faith covenant report and adopting it. I'm very sorry.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers on the item? No? Sure? Not a problem. Just in terms of you want to speak on the item? Okay.
What I was suggesting was proposing an amendment to the report, which is the next agenda item. I'm very sorry. So if you're okay to open it to the floor, I'd like to say something in favour of this, please.
Yes, go
on. So I think in terms of why do we need it, it's a little bit similar to the city of Sanctuary. I think in brief, not only the city plan makes sense when you see what the faith communities can contribute, but I also think that in our sort of day-to-day practice, I'm not really sure what we would do without some of the faith communities. And it's not only the time of global pandemics when your local church, your local mosque was providing and looking after you when the council couldn't. But I think what's very important is daily and mundane things which actually cost money, like playgroups. Out of 4 or 5 days that we use them, 4 are provided pretty much for free by churches. If we are serious and committed to the assets-based community development, I think it's a no-brainer because it provides mutual benefits. And I'll be more than happy to assist in forming this steering group, considering that I've declared my interest in both camps. I'm here and I'm also part of the Worcestershire Interfaith Forum. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll open it up to the floor once again if anybody has any questions. No? Okay, just a question I did raise at our meeting between ourselves. In terms of the latest census within Worcester indicates that there are more non-faith people in the city than faith people. I mean, how would this policy affect that the recognition actually that there are a lot of groups that over COVID that weren't faith-based did exactly the same good work in terms of contributing and helping their communities, and then what would that do? This policy do in terms of recognising those people as well?
I think I'd probably respond by saying that that would be a general approach to asset-based community development in any event. So obviously, we already work with lots of organisations that aren't faith-based across the city, and we're always happy to do so. So it's not to exclude anybody at all. I think it's just to include faith-based organisations specifically, which perhaps haven't been as included in our asset-based approaches as they have as other organisations may have done previously.
Yeah, thank you. And my second point is again around obviously consultation and engagement, and it's you know, talking to the wider community in terms of engagement with other faiths and faith groups. There seems to have been really little interaction in designing and, you know, getting backing and support for this in terms of that, and it's been and I'm really afraid that obviously this has been driven again by you know a few people with you know based on that. So how confident are we, Warwick, that are we going to go out and then actually make sure that this is a truly representative faith covenant?
Thank you, Chair. So this is about how the council is not just on a community services frontage, but the whole council orientated approach. So it just almost alludes back to your question about why are we just saying faith communities, why not communities in general? This is about how faith-based communities tend to have physical assets. Not just that, but they're providing. So this is about how the council. It says in the one section of the report. Sorry if I've not alluded to it, but it's about how we can commission services through not just faith-based organisations, but it sort of helps us set the relationship and the conversation that we are open to commissioning services or working with faith-based communities to be able to deliver the services that we want to do. And it also opens the door for us to listen to what faith-based communities can give us. So as you know, when we do our community consultations, we don't get diverse responses. This is an opportunity for us to widen our diverse response to our consultations and getting buy-in. I can't guarantee that we're going to get conversations with everyone, but the whole point is that we're going to try, and we're going to set out a stall, which means that if someone does come to us that we haven't spoken to before, we have those structures, we have those conversations with officers across the council, not just in one service area where we can have those conversations. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you, Warwick. I mean, look, the intention is good, but you know, we don't want it to end up in another tick box exercise saying, listen, we've gone out here, we've done this, we've done that, and nothing meaningful actually comes from it, and just use it as as something to tick off our equality and diversity strategy. That's the worry here in terms of that. I mean, the intention behind it is great. The recognition that faith groups over the COVID period have, and you know, even before then, have existed and have contributed to their communities and to the health and well-being of the city is absolutely essential and should be recognised. So I'll take it to the floor then in terms of the recommendations 1.1 to 1.3. All those in favour? I think that's unanimous. Thank you. That's carried. Thank you all. Okay, we have agenda item 11, the council motion of 28th Israel-Palestine conflict. I'm really careful that we don't reopen the debate on what happened, in council in terms of the actual debate, and concentrate what this committee has been tasked to do, if that's okay.
Thank you, Chair. So we've replayed the council motion that was approved in November as part of the report, and just to focus on that, Chair, following your words, that motion approved that Communities Committee consider whether the council should actively support the work of Worcester-Palestine Friendship. What we've set out in the report, Chair, are what we believe are three ways the council may want to provide that support. The first is through funding. Members will be aware that we provide grant funding through our small community grant scheme, or we can make strategic funding decisions where organisations are sort of contributing towards the city plan. The second is around communication and promotion. We do a wide range of both via sort of traditional and more modern ways. And again, if an organisation is contributing to city plan commitments and work that we are undertaking, then there is a precedent in us supporting our organisations. Particularly, we see that through Warwick's community team. And the last is community engagement. Now, even though I'm grateful for the speaker informing us that there has been work undertaken with the City Council in the past, we weren't aware of that. Perhaps that predates us all. So it's good to hear that. But again, members will be aware that we do work with community organisations across the city. And part of that may be about understanding or re-understanding again who the group are, who they represent, and the work they do, and importantly, where does that fit into the wider system? So they are the three avenues of support that we believe members will want to consider tonight. And just from an advisory point of view, Chair, paragraph 3.7, those avenues of support should only be considered if members are completely satisfied that the Worcester-Palestine Friendship does not partake in activism which is incompatible with the Council's objectives. So potentially there is a reputational risk. We don't say that to be worry horses, but just to advise members as part of the debate and to be aware of the reputational risk that there may be. Leave it there, Chair, open to debate.
Thank you very much, Chair. So this is the bit where I was going to suggest an amendment to. And I think the amendment will perhaps satisfy some of the concerns that Lloyd has just mentioned in terms of objectivity and essentially adhering to the wider Nolan principles in 310. So what I'm suggesting is redacting the whole paragraph 3.7. And the reason for that is it's a repetition of Nolan principles. And I would like to politely suggest that in this constant interaction between responsibility and accountability, it's actually not the members' responsibility to carry on due diligence checks on all organizations. It's not our responsibility to check those kinds of things. Our job, I would suggest, is to take positions, political position on whatever happens in Gaza and so on and so forth. So I think 310 makes it pretty clear that our behaviour has to be, as it should be as councillors and elected member. But I think that the duty to checking what's compatible or not and running due diligence, whether it's a grant from this organisation or whatever else, it's not our responsibility, it's the officer's responsibility. So on that basis, I would like to suggest the amendment which effectively redacts paragraph 3.7, please.
Chair, this is a published report, so I'm not aware of any mechanism to redact or amend a paragraph that's already in a published report. If Councillor Petrosky has concerns with that paragraph, he's made that public and that can be minuted, but there is no way of amending or redacting.
We've just done it. few agenda items before. We've just done it.
So we amended a recommendation.
Right.
But what we didn't amend was a paragraph within a published report.
Change that.
And just
I'll accept your advice. Thank you very much.
Councillor Lamb.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to have to be consistent, I'm afraid, with the views I expressed at full council. I've noted that we are not reopening this debate, and I accept that. But at full council, I didn't vote for this motion. I proposed what I believed was a much fairer and more balanced motion, which sort of put the entire issue within context. And therefore, I can't support this motion, and I will, based on whether I oppose it or whether I abstain on it, on perhaps some comments which may come in a minute. And my concern is, and we've just had this thing about the faith covenant, and the faith covenant is all about reflecting the diversity of the city and having everyone in our city feeding into what we do. But then what we've got now is a report which basically says, okay, yes, but we are going to support one particular group, supporting one particular point of view. And the substantive motion itself says that these horrific events have had a huge effect on many Worcester residents, in particular those with relatives and friends in the region. Yeah, and they're not just Palestinians, they're Jewish people who have got friends and relatives who are in Israel as well. And what I'm just concerned about is, and if we had a debate about amending the report, I know it's been said we can't do that, I would have opposed that because, you know, I think what comes out of this report is a bit of caution by officers, and I don't blame them, saying, you know, this isn't an organisation we know very well, okay? And the trouble is, if we openly support an organisation, we are then basically saying, within reason, especially if we start giving them money, that we agree and we subscribe to anything that organisation might say. And we don't know what this organisation is, okay? We've had no sort of connection with it previously. And some of the things here, you know, it's words, isn't it? You know, Worcester Palestine Friendship was established in 2009 as a group of local people, great, who take action for justice in Palestine. What does justice in Palestine mean? They raise awareness of the realities of life faced by Palestinians living in the occupied Palestinian territories, however that might be defined. Fundraise to support Palestinian projects and campaign for change. What does that change mean? I mean, I don't want to debate it now, but, you know, when people, you know, say things like freedom for Palestine, what does that mean? You know, it's not the place to debate it now, to be honest with you. I mean, can I ask a question? And this is a genuine question. I'm not trying to be mischievous in any way. And I will name Councillor Lawrenson because perhaps he can answer the question. Does this organisation believe in Israel's right to exist? No. It's a simple question, I think. Perhaps it's oversimplified, yes or no. Does it believe, as I do, in a two-state solution? Yes or no? Because the answer to that will have an impact on whether I abstain on this, which I'm going to, or whether I actually vote against it. And those are my concerns with this.
You have been named, so if you want to respond to that, you by all means do. But
Neil, I mean, I don't know this organisation. Sorry, Neil. I don't know this organisation. You do. It's a genuine question. I don't know what the stance of the organisation is. The trouble with grassroots organisations, by their nature, is they are very devolved. And if any person pertaining to be representative of this organisation makes a comment that then comes back to us and say, Worcester City Council is giving money to an organisation which says X, we do have to be cautious, which is why I raise my concern.
Councillor Lamb, you're quite right in those concerns. But that's why the clause in 3.7 is there. And in terms of the organisation itself, this is what this report tends to do, this is not by all means a final decision on anything. This is an exploratory report to work with that organisation to find out what their constitution is, what they believe, and what causes that they are reflecting, and to see if they are compatible with our constitution and our modes of operandi. So whether this is not a commitment, this is a provisional say to go and explore what this organisation is about, and then to bring back to this committee for a final decision. I believe that's done.
If that's what committee decide and instruct officers to do, that's the case. It's not recommending that. What we've done in this report is set out 3 options for how the council may wish to support the group, but it's not recommending one, 2 or 3 of them.
Councillor Lawrence.
What am I allowed to say now? Do I have to represent an organisation that I'm not a member of, or can I raise the contribution that I wanted to raise in the first place? What am I allowed? What am I meant to say at this point?
Well, whatever you want to say, Councillor Lawrence, and
So
you've
you
been
want-
named, so you're allowed
Okay,
to
thank
respond
you,
to that.
thank you. Okay,
But
'cause-
you're
'cause,
also allowed to speak on
you know,
the proposal here. Yeah.
You know, because there's the risk of the item that we're meant to be discussing being completely diverted, and I resent that, because I had advice prior to the meeting coaching me into not raising the original debate that took place last November, and now there's an open invitation. I'm not going to take that invitation.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Can I clarify? Am I not able, if I'm going to put my name to a report, am I not able to ask a question to seek clarification? Sorry, point of order. I don't think it is unreasonable, with all due respect.
I mean, with the very same respect, you're allowed to, if the debate has been opened up, then you're allowed to respond to that debate. So if Councillor Lamb is within his right to ask a question, and as you are yourself, yeah.
Thank you.
But what we were trying to avoid was obviously what had happened.
I'm not trying to, no.
But you're free to say what you need to say.
I'm trying to talk about what's on the agenda. That's what I'm trying to do. But if you really want an answer, yes. But if you want to ask the organisation, ask them. But they also believe that Palestine should exist as well. So that's the answer to your question. I resent answering. Yes. And if they said the contrary, I'd be disturbed by that. My resentment stems from the fact that I was told not to open up a wider debate, and here we are. So, you know, and I also resent, here it comes to my original contribution, I resent 3.10 about the council should consider the wider Nolan principles around objectivity and impartiality, because, you know, there is that on the Worcester City Council website with a big headline saying support for Ukraine and practical suggestions as to how we can support Ukrainian people, which is absolutely brilliant. And of course you can do that, and you can support Palestinian people, and you can support Israeli people, and you can support any nationality. It's a false dichotomy to say, well, if we support Worcester-Palestine friendship, we're picking one over the other. It's just not true, because we're supporting people from the Ukraine, and we can do the same for other people from other countries. But to come back to what we're talking about here, and we are doing it, we are living the motion, because it says, point 3, request that the Communities Committee consider whether the Council should actively support the work of Worcester-Palestine friendship. And this report is just for noting. So there's a lot of hot air coming from me at the moment, but at the end of this discussion, nothing's going to really change, because it's just a noting exercise. Having said that, well, nothing's going to change. It could do, because we could take on the recommendations, or one of the 3, which is, does the council support the group through grant funding, communication and promotion, and engagement? My suggestion would be to alert Worcester-Palestine Friendship to grant funding, and it would be to use the website, as we have done for Ukrainian people, to alert the wider population as to how Palestinian people can be supported. And that might be a compromise between doing nothing and Worcester City Council being seen to be somehow partisan. So I am personally in favour, and thank you to the officers for writing a report which they knew was going to cause this, you know, uncomfortable debate, but that's politics. And that was patronising. I believe that grant funding, making the group aware of the grant funding, and yes, providing officer time to help them apply for grant funding should be the way forward. And we should use our comms to sensitive manner, promote Palestine solidarity. I don't think that's controversial. I don't think that's controversial. And then you're taking away the controversy around being seen to promote just one cause. That's not promoting one cause. We're already promoting the Ukrainian cause. It's massive hypocrisy. But I'm not going to get drawn into the debate that we had last November. I'm talking about practical support, and that's what this report is about, and that's what I was coached to talk about, and that's what I am talking about. So my suggestion to this committee would be, yes, we will actively support Worcester-Palestine Friendship by making them aware of grant funding, providing officer time if necessary to help them make those applications, and using comms in a sensitive manner to promote Palestine solidarity. And if we can't promote Palestinian solidarity in a time of genocide, we never will. So please, let's see sense.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. And I'll take Councillor Amos, then Councillor Cooper, and then Councillor Petrovsky.
Thank you, Chair. Really just a couple of comments. I was surprised that this motion was actually allowed, to be honest, because, in my opinion, it's about foreign policy. And as such, a similar motion, but for the other side, was disallowed at the County Council. However, having said that, decision was made. I respect that, I accept that. We had a discussion, we had a debate, we had a vote. And it may be helpful for some members that I actually voted for the motion, even though I'm not aware that most Palestinians are white Europeans. I voted for the motion because that's what I believed in. However, where we go from here, I do not know. I'm sure greater minds than mine can find a solution this evening, but I supported the motion. Clearly, we need to give some effect to it, otherwise it makes it rather meaningless.
Thank you, Councillor Amos. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to draw members' attention to the last sentence of 3.10. Also, the Council has a duty to promote and foster good relationships between community groups, and so the Council should ensure that it is not supporting one group to the detriment of others. So for me, that puts my mind at ease that we can take this action and it's not going to detriment any other groups. So I feel very reassured that I can vote for this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Petrovsky.
I'm afraid, I don't know, it could be late. I've looked at both reports under agenda item 8 and under agenda item 11. I said I accept the advice, but I honestly, genuinely do not see a difference in the sense that we were happy to accept an amendment to one report, and we are not allowed to. It says exactly the same thing. It's not even the case of changing the motion or anything else. It asks us to know the contents of it. So what the Chair in the case of agenda item 8 suggested was some added wording, which is an amendment. In this case, what I'm suggesting is redacting, losing some of the wording. And my only, and it's not only, I don't practice law and whatever. I am actually, that is my background. But I don't see the difference. It's not even a legal dispute. It's the dispute between two exactly the same reports, and one of them was allowed to have an amendment, and the other one isn't. I struggle with that. I'm sorry.
So the previous report, Chair, there was an amendment or an addition made to the recommendations. So because you are voting on that as members, you have the ability to amend, approve. What you've got with this report is that this is a published report with a paragraph in it, and you're being asked to note the report. Councillor Petrovsky, your option is, if you don't wish to note the report, then that is an option for you, and the point you have made can be picked up in the minutes, but we have no ability, or a member has no ability to be able to put up a motion to amend a paragraph within a published report. That can only be done with recommendations.
Thank you, but I'm going to take the officer's advice on this recommendation, but we can see clarification from the legal officer from tomorrow. Is that okay? I mean, just in terms of just some, is there any other speakers, by the way, on this item? No? No. Councillor Lawrence, are you proposing an additional recommendation to this report? And if so, what is that? Because then that has to be seconded and then voted. You're not changing a paragraph, but he's adding an additional recommendation.
No, I'm selecting 2 out of the 3 concrete suggestions from officers within the report. And I was going to ask what happens next, because within the midst of my bluster, I did actually make a suggestion. I did wonder what was going to happen with that suggestion. So thank you very much, because I can reiterate that I would like 2 of the 3 proposals to be put to the committee.
So you, in effect, you're putting forward a recommendation that we go forward with 2 of the...
Basically, yeah, within what I said, I was effectively saying, yes, can we have a recommendation and put it to the committee? You know, but that is, you know, that is me saying that. I mean, I'm looking around the room. That's just me as one person saying I personally think those are 2 concrete, practical suggestions that will have a positive effect. Whether people agree with that, we shall see.
Okay, thank you. Can you then formally propose that and get it seconded?
And I'll look around for a seconder.
With the 2 recommendations that you will recommend?
Yeah, so basically I'm taking out community engagement and keeping the other 2. And so, yes, please, I would like to formally propose that. That's okay.
Are we now allowed to amend this or not? I think we should, based on what we did with the previous one. Know exactly the same ideas.
Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Cooper. Okay, so we'll put that to the vote then. All those in favour of the amended recommendation.
So can you be clear, you know, the wording of the amendment?
Well, you'll propose it then.
Yeah, so we are voting for the first 2 officer recommendations, which under 3 point, sorry, my computer died, 3 point, whatever it was.
Okay, so just to be clear then, Chair, the proposal is that this committee will instruct officers to work with the Worcester Palestine Friendship Group to explore funding opportunities and how the council can communicate and promote their work.
Chair, can I, while Councillor Lawrence was speaking, what I wrote down, and maybe this will help you also, that the committee notes the report and agrees to make the organisation aware of the availability of grant funding, support them if necessary to apply for funding, and use our website to encourage support for Palestine. Is that what you intended?
Yeah, that's nearer to it. Well, that is it. Thank you. That's what we're voting on.
So just for clarity and just for peace of mind, the other elements are still included within the report as the safety mechanism and mechanisms. Nothing in that will change. It's the recommendations of support that were what is being proposed here as going forward with. So the due diligence checks, etc., in terms of will still need to be carried out, and conversations had with the group in terms of their constitution, etc. Yeah. Does that make sense? So all those in favour of that amended recommendation then? Yeah. Yeah. That's fine. Okay. Any abstentions? Councillor, that's noted. I think that's everyone. And any against? No. That now becomes the substantive recommendation. So all those in favour of the substantive recommendation? Okay. Any abstentions? Councillor Lamb, and any against? So that's carried. Thank you. That makes sense. Have you got- Not a problem. Do we have anything else? There isn't any other business to be notified. Really appreciate your time this evening. Thank you for your questioning and your patience and all your effort on this. Thank you, and thank you to officers as well.